stuff, right? Merry Little Batman, Teen Titans Go, they're all like different things. But you wouldn't say it's straight up attempting to do a mainstream canon adaptation. Dynamic Duo, hearing Gunn saying that he might try and fit it in, I don't know if I'm too fond of the idea. And I'm sure, like, again, they come out as this dynamic duo. Like, I guess the arc of the film is for them to be like the balance of, you know, justice between both Robins or something like that. They're both vigilantes under Batman. One's a bit more like idealistically like this, Jason's a bit like that, but together they balance each other out like the bloody twins in Star Wars The Acolyte. Did I just say that? But you get what I'm trying to say, right? Roughly. I don't know, like, that's like, no, like, don't make that the past of the DC Bat family. Why not just have it like traditional Dick Grayson, Nightwing, as I said earlier, Jason comes along. Yeah, sure, Dick Grayson and Jason know each other, most likely. Maybe they get on pretty well, but, like, Jason dies, all that good stuff, and all that good stuff. Oh, God. I'm going to have Red Hood come after me in a minute. But you get what I mean. That just makes more sense. Why not do that? You can still innovate. You don't have to copy and paste everything. As I've said, I'm open to that. But doing it the dynamic duo way, granted, I do want to say it's not exactly the firmest synopsis or description of the movie we have, but on the rough baseline concept, if what I'm like reading out there from those first reports is even roughly true, I wouldn't really dig the idea of the early days of Dick Grayson and Jason Todd working together with differing ideas. And sure, I'm being quite presumptuous here with what it could mean based on so little, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. Maybe I've got tunnel vision with this one and I'm not really seeing the potential in it, but how do you feel about these two youths becoming tested by their diverging ideas for what their future should be, when really Dick Grayson at that point should be Nightwing or nearing Nightwing, while Jason's like with Batman? And maybe there is something in it that I'm not seeing. This is why I do stay open to the whole adaptations, don't copy and paste thing, but for now, I don't know. And speaking of age earlier, Jeff M 1969 says, I don't want him to be too old. This guy, along with Clark, needs to be long-term cornerstones of this 10-year stretch. We don't want a 60-year-old Batman in 2030. So I don't know if everyone's got the memo, but don't forget, James Gunn did say that this Batman wouldn't be middle-aged. I think that was the latest, you know, Batman age update. So middle-aged is like technically, you know, it's getting older and older, but it is roughly like early 40s, mid-40s onwards.
Yes,
so to everyone who's saying like, oh yeah, they're gonna get like the Kumail Nanjiani, Carl Chandler, Joshua Brolin equivalent age of Batman, apparently not. Or even like the whole Lee Pace thing, and I think Lee Pace would be an impeccable Batman, I really do. But even actors like that would be technically going against Gunn's word of middle-aged, because technically if you're like late 40s, you kind of are under the middle-aged banner now. So when it comes to all of these fan castings, and I still need to make my fabled fan casting video, you know, again, Lee Pace being a great example. He's 45 now, but by the time the DC Batman is cast, I mean, this is only assuming with Brave and the Bold, he'd probably be 47, but who knows? Like, again, we could have an out-of-left-field Clayface equivalent announcement, and it's like, world's finest, so we're getting a DC Batman sooner than what we think. Or actually, Batman is appearing in Clayface, and not just as a shadow, actually maybe a bit of a look at the face, so they are casting on, which is less believable, but still, actors that I keep seeing pop up like that, technically, as per Google's definition, it is generally defined middle-aged as being between the ages of 40 and 60. So anyone like 45 plus that people are kind of suggesting, unless Gunn straight up does lie, which I know a lot of people say, oh, James Gunn's a liar, blah, 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 or whatever. You know, that's probably not going to happen. Which is why I see why people kind of go for like the Brandon Sklenar vibe, because he's similar to Corin Sweat in age. Sure, he's a little bit older, but like he fits the mold in lots of areas, but also within age. But then, so many people want Alan Richardson, and he's 42. Let's just say there isn't a world's finest announcement out of left field, and there isn't a Batman in Clayface, or at least a casting to whatever they could do. Then he could be Batman at 44. That's technically middle-aged, but let me put it this way. I still think Gunn could maybe get away with what we call as a white lie. I know people would be like, that's straight up a lie. But maybe he could still cast somebody who's 42. Because again, as I often say, just because, let's just say, Cole Chandler is 59 in real life, but he's playing Hal Jordan in universe with bloody foundation and makeup on your face. Like he could still be argued to look like a 49, 48-year-old Hal, if you know what I mean. When in reality he's 59 in real life. So Alan Ritchson could play, you know, a physical peak, conditioned Batman in his mid to late 30s, even though he's like 43, 44 in real life by that point, right? And technically, you know, since middle-aged is 40 to 60 generally defined, you know, maybe Gunn could be like, well, that's the general definition. I see middle-aged as more, you know, 48 to 60 plus. You know, 42, kind of get away with that. But let me know what your outlook on that would be, because funnily enough, I could imagine people wouldn't have a go at Gunn for that, because I feel like most Batman fan castings are technically breaking the middle-aged rule that he said they wouldn't be middle-aged, but only by like a handful of years. And again, the longer we live, technically middle-aged is getting a little bit older and older, depending on where you read the definition of middle-aged. And I get that's kind of coping. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts on that. But I would, if you want to go strict no middle-aged, you technically do need to be looking at people in their 30s, like David Corn Sweat, but he's a bit too young, which is why, you know, just, I'm not saying Brandon Sklenar Batman, but I'm just saying, hey, Brandon Sklenar is 34 years old. Even if in a couple of years Batman is being cast, like not anytime soon, he would still be 36 and more or less the perfect age to play a DC Batman with all of the chronology I went over earlier. Even though, by the way, with everything I said earlier, by the time Damian comes in, he should really be in his 40s, like really. But I understand why people want a little bit of a younger Batman. So that's why I condensed down the chronology of the Robins and stuff like that, while still having them. So from Tabor Van Dusseldorp 1035, I would love to see this be a fantastical Batman universe, but I also would love for it to be dark, gritty, and emotional. When the audience can really understand the tense dynamic between Bruce and Batman and the toll that has on Bruce's life, you get a really well-rounded story. I think that's what we need on the big screen. And I think that's what a lot of people want. Don't get me wrong, we've had the dark, gritty Batman, and Batman's always that, but what I mean is, look at, you know, the Nolan trilogy, look at, you know, even Pattinson's Elseworlds. I think people are ready for the fantastical Batman, kind of Grant Morrison, embracing everything, right? And what I mean by that is Grant Morrison's run, all while it can be really messed up, it does embrace a lot of the goofier vibes of a more flamboyant, fantastical universe. And that's what I think people just need to accept. It doesn't mean Batman isn't still Batman in that universe. It just means you are going to get every color of the spectrum of Batman, which is technically what Morrison did. He kind of made it such that every Batman story out there, even the wackiest ones, is canon, even if that means in the comic book he's adapting one of them as like a weird messed up dream. Do you know what I mean? It's still technically canon within the Morrison run in a weird roundabout way. That's the cool, you know, creative idea that he had. But I think with Damian Wayne coming in, Batman and Son, you're going to have like almost these kick-ass messed up elements of seeing it. Like if Gunn goes there the way I think he will, having a hit girl Damian Wayne could be mad. Like mad, right? But also having Bruce tackle that and try and keep basically a leash on his kid and trying to like teach him what, I know that's the way you've been raised, but like this could like touch on so many cool things in live action. I think this is a different and cool way of doing what we've seen, like from this, you know, serious Batman, dark Batman, gritty Batman, emotional Batman, but finally a bit of a different Batman where you have all of that, but it's finally, I don't know, I guess I keep saying the same things, it's just portrayed in a innovative way. I keep like dancing around, oh yeah, see this, see that, but how? Well, we haven't had a Batman other than like video games and comics and stuff on screen where it's actually like, hey, he actually has a Bat family there. The Batcave is full of all of these trophies, like all of the trophies like maybe that you're seeing on screen right now. Okay, sure, I'm probably getting my expectations up, who knows how they're truly going to adapt it, but again, just roughly based on Damian Wayne coming in, we're going to see a Batman at this stage of his career, and you can see a different take on how to show those same themes with a Batman at this point in his life, tackling his son's morality with the way that he was raised, balancing his relationships with different Bat family members. Is Bruce not developed enough himself? Of course he isn't. He's always got something to learn. He's always needs to kind of learn how to be a better father to, you know, Dick and other Robins out there, and other, you know, all of these things. I'm so looking forward to seeing this in that new vision, because other than video games and stuff, we haven't truly had it. I think, if anything, in live action, Titans, the DC Universe show, that went to HBO Max. Sure, you might not agree with the whole England Batman or the way they did this, the way they did that, but that was actually a live action Batman who we only really ever saw as Bruce Wayne, but with this network of other Robins and stuff that was forming. Now, maybe I'm having a brain fart right now, but like, technically speaking, and sure, again, that wasn't like the perfect iteration, but one thing I really digged about it is that it was striving to do an iteration, an adaptation of that. And now in the DCU, oh man, there's so much that they can shine.
That's the past that game.
They
even go up.
We're starting right in the middle of it. Not with all of these Robins are dead, or only one of them or two of them are technically only ever being adapted. There should be a rich history with also so much more yet to come for Bruce Wayne, Batman in the DCU, and the Bat family overall. So from that guy, 1999, hey Bubba, love the content and have been a fan since the early Gotham days. That's insane, man. We're talking like 7-8 years ago now. My question and theory is, I think that we might genuinely see the DCU Batman get a video game. With the news of Rocksteady reportedly developing a new Batman game, I genuinely believe it's the perfect opportunity for the first DCU game. Think of it, an insanely fleshed out open world Gotham with an extensive rogues gallery would be the perfect way to catch us up and expand on the DCU Batman's lore, and would possibly gross an insane profit as well. Thanks for reading my comments, and I hope all is well. You know what, I said this when, you know, we had the studio closures, the Wonder Woman game cancelled, the pitch for Constantine and Flash video game never, you know, went into active development. I said it really wouldn't surprise me. The thing about the DCU video game situation is there's possibly all kinds of things, maybe not, but maybe in development. I say maybe not because Warner Brothers games seem to be playing things very safe. Gunn was like, yeah, like we should be doing DCU video games. It's a DCU canon spread across video games, animation, and live action, right?
This election is going to have insurmountable impacts in the scope of reproductive health here in the state of Wisconsin.
I'm voting in this spring election for my future patients and their decision to make healthcare decisions for their own bodies.
I believe that healthcare and any type of healthcare should not be on a ballot.
As our state Supreme Court decides the fate of the 1849 abortion ban, we need to make sure that we have a judge on the court who is going to protect our rights and our ability to practice evidence-based healthcare.
An elegant touch for an everyday meal. Vanity Fair napkins. Elevate every day.
New Chipotle Honey Chicken brings a hint of pure honey,
shout out Flippy,
and seared
man,
smoked peppers with fresh chicken hot off the grill. For Chipotle heat with a touch of sweet and a perfectly balanced sauce. Chipotle Honey Chicken takes heat and sweet to a whole new level.
Take me out to the mountains. Take me out to South Beach. Buy me room service and mini bar snacks. I don't care if I never check out. So it's book your next hotel. If you don't book, it's a shame.
So it's resort.
Sweet vacation home for your next great stay.
So knowing that Rocksteady is doing a Batman game rather, and it's years away, which makes sense. A game shouldn't be rushed out in a couple of years. These days, a decent game takes 5-6 years to make. But also, yes, with it being years away, it makes sense that we're well into the DCU by that point. Why not make it a DCU Batman video game? Like, if we've had the Arkham games already, you could technically follow on from the Arkham games in a way, but if you've already got a DCU Batman with a Bat family built up around him, and you've said that this canon of the DCU's world is going into the video game territory. Why not make it some kind of adventure for the DCU Batman? I completely agree with what that guy said. If I were to bet on this, I would say that it's kind of maybe above 50% like chance of it being a DC Batman game. The only thing with that is you're going to have to heavily vet it. Like, Gunn is going to have to be heavily involved. He would have to give them insane bullet points, say, like, this is what the story should be, these are the characters that need to be in it, and this is where Batman is at after the Brave and the Bold, and the world and stuff around it. I don't know, like, maybe you can explore more of Nightwing in that compared to seeing him again in Teen Titans. I really don't know. This is heavy and insane conjecture at this point. It might not be a DC Batman video game, but I do agree that it would be, hey, if you're going back to Batman again, you may as well do DCU Batman. Up next from Nick3607, I think maybe Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, whatever bloody way you want to pronounce it, will be the villain of this movie, since we're also introducing Damian and probably Talia in this movie. Speaking of Ra's, we also have Jack Slade UAM saying, I'm just gonna say, I'm hoping we get an honest-to-goodness 500-year-old Ra's al Ghul. Since we're getting Damian, I don't see how we wouldn't get some version of Ra's. Liam Neeson is a fantastic actor, but I'm hoping we get a full-on fantastical portrayal. I do agree. Now, as for, like, main villain, that's, you know, a thing we need to figure out, because I get asked a lot, like, okay, who's the villain going to be in Brave and the Bold? And I think I would really be happy with Ra's al Ghul. I'm not saying that is going to be, or who I think will be, but let's just say that was announced. It would make tons of sense, just with Damian's backstory. I could truly see them, like, Talia fleeing with Damian. Bruce doesn't really know he has a kid, gets dropped off on his doorstep, and that's because Ra's al Ghul is trying to use Damian's body to, like, live on. At this point, Ra's could be in that kind of Voldemort little kind of, like, tucked up mode, like, you know, and you might have White Ghost, like, so you could have Ra's as this looming threat with the League of Assassins, but you could have White Ghost really trying to bring back Ra's al Ghul, whose body is, like, decaying, and that's why he wants, you know, his grandson to, you know, he wants to take over his grandson's body. But obviously Talia's like, well, no, I don't want that, so let's go to Batman. But Batman's like, wait, what? A, I've got a kid, but B, I'm caught up in all of this. That could be a good introduction. This could mean that League of Assassins members pursue Batman and go into Gotham. It also means, and before anyone says it, but it'll be retreading. No, it won't. This isn't Liam, as pointed out in that comment. This isn't Liam Neeson's Ra's al Ghul. The DCU Ra's al Ghul would be so cool. Like, we're talking full-on Lazarus Pit, full-on fantastical universe, and you could even pick up the movie that way. I can see a sequence, the first 8 to 10 minutes of the movie, being in Nanda Parbat with Damian, having a normal everyday life of Damian with Talia, kind of around the League of Assassins area, and then all of a sudden, he's being kind of coaxed into by the White Ghost to basically be taken over by Ra's. All of a sudden, they start fleeing. Talia gets him out of there, and it's like this high action, you know, catapult into the movie, into the Batcave. And then you can imagine, you know, the sequence into the Batcave. The Bat flies by, and Damian is like wandering around in there. And you could also like have Batman just kind of like drop in, like, who are you? Or something. I don't know. And it's like, hey, father. And it's just like, boom, credits, Batman. The Brave and the Bold. I'm not saying that's a great idea. I'm just saying that's a way to catapult the beginning of that movie, and then you hear in the background, or it could just, before the credits, if they do a title screen, sorry, you might hear "Hello, my love" or something like that, and Batman's like, oh, so something like that, like, what's going on now? So then Batman is left with Damian because Talia has to deal with the split faction of the League of Assassins, because you could have Sensei or White Ghost have some loyalists to him, but then Talia has her own loyalists. You also have Ra's basically being like, well, I still want to come back. I know I'm kind of going on all over the place right now, but that just seems like a believable one, because it truly gives a reason for Damian to go to the Batcave in the first place, because he kind of needs to. Sure, you could go with an option where Damian just wants to learn more about his father. It's kind of at that age where he just leaves Nanda Parbat, even without Talia knowing. But I guess he could be curious, but the whole, you know, Ra's al Ghul being Ra's al Ghul, used the Lazarus Pit too many times, hey, I've secretly, you know, had Damian in mind this whole time to take over his body kind of thing, is a lot more believable. And also this way, it is kind of a main villain in a sense, but while you have Batman teaching his son, and it offers this whole other through line in the movie of, you know, Batman learning to be a dad, also Batman being Batman, Damian being Damian, them both clashing that way, but them also both grounding each other. That's what makes the Batman and son story a really interesting Bruce Wayne and Batman story, but also a transformative arc for Damian Wayne as well, where there's this kind of new equilibrium found for both characters by the ending events of the story. But throughout that, you could also have other villains peppered in there throughout Gotham while, like, Bruce is teaching Damian to kind of calm down a little bit, but that might get a bit too messy if you're already trying to escape the League of Assassins who are coming after them, or something like that. I don't really know where I'm going with this or how they'll adapt those comic book storylines, but Ra's al Ghul, I can just read that already a lot of people would be like, oh really, Ra's al Ghul? But I think that would rub me the wrong way, hearing a bunch of people say that, because they're acting like Liam Neeson the last time we properly saw Ra's al Ghul in the movie sense is anything remotely similar to a Lazarus Pit Ra's al Ghul trying to take over his grandson to live on. Like, come on guys, that's not remotely the same thing. And what I like, even though, you know, Gotham very much so took on its own ideas, the Ra's al Ghul we had in that was super cool in terms of what I can, and maybe you're seeing clips on the screen, you could kind of see that threat, right? And also the history to Ra's and Bruce that could be reawakened there. I don't know, I feel like a broad plot like that, it's more of like a looming threat. The main through line of the movie is the relationship between Batman and son. You might encounter League stuff here and there. Maybe the physical threat could be someone like White Ghost actually finding where Damian went to and going up against Batman and Damian Wayne, because he wants to drag Damian Wayne back to Ra's al Ghul, or maybe Ra's al Ghul has taken over another body to bring Damian back to complete the ritual so he can actually take over his body. So there's maybe a culmination in the movie like that. But mainly, as I keep saying, this through line of the movie is the relationship between Batman and son, where you get action every now and again while they're evading or trying to hide away from the League learning their location. And also you can revisit Talia and Bruce history there. You can bring Nightwing into the movie. You can bring in Oracle into the movie because she will have, like, you know, intel on how the League are tracking them or something like that at some part in the city. All of this stuff, like, you can bring in all of these organic parts of the Bat family as it currently is in present day DCU into the film in a way that I think really works, despite me kind of being all over the place when roughly explaining this. If you have any other alternate ways of doing it, let me know. But I think, you know, Ra's will have to be involved in some way, as you guys are pointing out. And I just think depicting Ra's as maybe somebody who's been around, obviously, for a very long time, but maybe really wanting to take over his grandson's body, which also, I think, adds a very believable reason as to why Damian would want to leave the League. So, like, he can't really change who he is straight away. Like, he's still a murderous ninja assassin. But I don't want to be in a place with my grandfather. Like, so I have to be with my father in Gotham. But I'm still who I am, this kind of entitled, spoiled ninja brat, right? Who will go through this transformation during the film, thanks to Batman, but Batman will obviously learn a few lessons as well. I really do feel like Ra's propels that, but also Ra's and those loyal to him won't want him dying, so there will still be a threat in the movie. To me, at least for now, that's the most obvious option to go with. I don't know, I'm gonna shut up now, but I really like that idea. Fantastical universe, guys. Don't forget, fantastical Ra's al Ghul, fantastical ninjas, and lots of lessons learned for both characters along the way. And best of all, loads of exposition. Bat family sprinkled in there. I could keep talking, clearly. That's how much I freaking love talking about the potential plot of this film, because I could just see it in my head. I could see it. Liam Soprano 6942 says, though, that I want Red Claw, Rupert Thorne, Ra's, and Mr. Freeze. Well, sorry to burst your bubble, my friend, but do not forget that in the DCU, around 15 years ago, Rupert Thorne was killed by Dr. Phosphorus. Don't forget that in Creature Commandos, Rupert Thorne was the reason why Dr. Phosphorus was created. And let's just say Dr. Phosphorus went right up to his home, marched up there, and killed him and his family. So, yeah. Since Brave and the Bold is set in present day, or like DC Batman in general, in present day, Yeah, Rupert Thorne's not going to be there. But hey, Mr. Freeze, he's out there somewhere, especially probably present day, maybe. Red Claw animated series vibes, that'd be pretty cool. 3 Rick Claw says, hey, bro,
that shit, yeah.
the DC Batman will have the white eyes, much like the animated series, comics, and others. It worked on Deadpool, so I'm wondering if it will for Batman as well. I've always had the attitude where, look, we've got a Elseworlds Batman where I really don't agree with white eyes. I agree with how you can tell there's emotion under the eyes. To the people who say, but Boba, you can still do white eyes because you still have facial expressions for acting. Look, I get it. I get what you're saying. I'm not stupid. Yes, my micro muscles in my face portray emotion if I had white eyes, but there is so much you can see in the eyes under the Batman cowl. But for the DCU, I'm like, you know what? If you want to go there, go for it. I'm all game. I've got that Batman over there. Do what you want with the DC Batman. However, what you need to understand at the same time is Deadpool's white eyes are very expressive, and I don't think they would be that expressive the way they would do it for Batman on his Batman cowl. It's not going to be necessarily like animation, unless you really gave the Batman cowl, the DC Batman in live action, like maneuverable white eyes that truly do gasp in the same way that you may be seeing on screen with Deadpool. I don't know though. Let me just say I'm game for it. I'm down for it, but I don't know if they're going to do it. It'd be really cool. As well as, like, I got asked here about the Batmobile, like, how would I want the Batmobile to be done? Asked by Gene DLLJD here. And for me, honestly, I absolutely Telltale Batman kind of Batmobile. It's kind of like a mix between a car and, like, a supercar. So you've got Panson's Batmobile, which is straight up, like, muscle car, which is modified by him. Yeah, I don't want it, like, Tumblr or necessarily as tanky as, like, Arkham game Batmobile or Ben Affleck's Batmobile, but the Batmobile from the Telltale series is truly like a perfect like middle ground where, hey, car, but also this looks like a super kind of Batmobile kind of car, and I love that. So honestly, I really want them to take quite a bit of influences for DC Batman from some of the video games. Telltale Batman, Arkham Batman, that would be amazing. But that, unfortunately, guys, is everything I'm going to get into in today's DCU Batman discussion series video. What you can actually do is let me know if you would like to see individual discussion series videos like this more in the future. So maybe another separate DC Batman one, maybe another separate, because I definitely will be doing a separate discussion series on Superman once the official trailer drops after CinemaCon. So it won't be like a broad DC one. It's just going to be about Superman. So I might keep doing this for other characters as well. Let me know any suggestions, but I think we, you know, rambled enough for today, but would absolutely love to know any and all thoughts with regards to what we covered. But if you like this video, would really appreciate a like. Consider subscribing for more nerd out videos like this. Until I return from honeymoon, guys, I hope you enjoy the content that I have planned, and I guess I will be seeing you in the next one. So thank you so much for watching, Bat Family. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.
Why is Elon Musk pouring millions of dollars into Wisconsin? Because he's trying to buy our Supreme Court seat for this guy, Brad Schimmel. Could Brad Schimmel be his little bitch? What do you think? Don't let Musk turn Wisconsin into a total Schimmel show.
I said, enough. I started Cosentix.
Ladies, gentlemen, fellow Bat family out there, welcome to the Batman 2 discussion series video episode. This has been a while. I checked the upload date and it was coming up to 13 weeks ago. So 3 months since the last episode. That's insane, but hey, we are here. If just in case you're brand new, what do we do in a discussion series episode? We literally just nerd out, talk the Batman 2, talk theories based on just new interesting ideas that have come up amongst people, or even based on some news tidbits or rumors that are out there. I am more than looking forward to getting into the questions that you guys have sent in today, because it's just, you know, I need my Batman fix, and I'm hoping you guys do as well. So let's nerd out about this together. Go ahead, leave a like on this video only if you do go on to enjoy it, and of course consider subscribing subscribing if you haven't done so already, because according to my channel analytics, 52.2% of people in 2024 who came back to watch videos again and again, like time and time again, aren't subscribed. So maybe you're in one of the 52.2%, maybe join the family today. But let's get into Keon Hold 9702's question. Oh, another Batman Boba video 2 months ago. I'm sorry, it took 2 months to get to this, Keon. When do you think we're going to get some concrete news on casting? Well, hopefully, like, in terms of the grand scheme of things, I want to say soon, but soon, again, in the grand scheme of things, by the Batman sagas, epic crime sagas standards, it's still several months' time. Now, we've had some exciting news recently, somewhat exciting news with Andy Serkis first coming out and saying that he's been told the story of the Batman 2 by Matt Reeves, and he is so excited about it. Granted, I can't say that the script is completely done, but Matt Reeves has got it to a point where he's probably, you know, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, but because he's at that point, he's like, hey, Andy Serkis, main star of the movie, Robert Pattinson, maybe even Jeffrey Wright knows. I wouldn't be surprised if Jeffrey Wright has an interview at some point in the next 8 weeks or God knows when, and he's like, yeah, I know what the story is now. Looking forward to getting into it later this year. That he's told them, because with that, we're getting closer. And the reason why I wanted to kind of waffle on about that initially is because, of course, you asked, when now are we going to get some concrete news on casting? Well, it's important to understand how things are going to unfold in the next 6 months, give or take, because Reeves obviously still has some time, and then you've got pre-production and all of the vast work that goes into that in all manners of departments. That will likely start in a couple or so months' time, just, you know, giving it, let's just say, 6 months of preparation until shooting begins. That's how much the first movie had. Again, it started pre-production in the summer of 2019, and they started shooting in January 2020. Of course, I don't know if it's going to be the exact same amount of time in pre-production, 6 months, but let's just say in 2 to 3 months' time, add 6 months on top of that of pre-production. That would line up to what Robert Pattinson recently said and how they're shooting at the end of the year, and as Matt Reeves said himself as well, in the third quarter of 2025. Now, the reason why I waffle on about that is because when we understand how long pre-production takes and when production will roughly begin towards the end of this year, we can also kind of look at the first movie and when major trades started to get wind of who could be involved to play the major roles, such as the Riddler and Penguin. Now, again, I do want to stress that this is just me giving us a rough ballpark of when news could be coming out for Part 2 for like the new Rogues Gallery villain, just kind of basing it off of when it came out during Part 1's pre-production. So obviously we're not really going to count Robert Pattinson here because he was cast in May 2019. We had that Variety report that you guys are seeing on screen. But what about, you know, more realistic comparisons here? So do you guys remember when Jonah Hill was in talks to play the Riddler or even the Penguin? And we had the report here from The Wrap in September of 2019. Now, that's interesting because essentially, as I said, the pre-production really kind of started summer of 2019. You have all of this stuff happening at the same time, like James Chimblin and his production design. You have, you know, the VFX people being approached to start thinking about what they're going to do there. It's like all of these cooks in the kitchen that is happening while they're also simultaneously on the other side of things looking at who they're going to scoop up to play their characters in the movie. So it makes sense, you know, a couple of months after, you know, the summer of 2019 getting into September, that's when you started getting Jeffrey Wright cast. That's when you had, oh, is Jonah Hill going to be playing the Riddler or the Penguin? But then November 5th, 2019, we have this report here from Deadline saying Colin Farrell is in talks to play the Penguin, rounding out the Batman villain trio. So, long story long here, just to kind of really go over it as comprehensively as I can. If this movie, as we know, is meant to be filming towards the end of this year, so it's looking to be an October, November-ish rough principal photography, like shooting time. Well, if you just subtract roughly 5-6 months off of November, well, that would take us to May 2025. So, you know, a few months time, as I said, for the pre-production to really get the ball rolling, and then any time after that, after May, we could be hearing about, okay, this actor is in talks to play Hush It's not confirmed, but this major trade, such as The Hollywood Reporter, has got wind from a source inside DC Studios that Matt Reeves is eyeing this actor, or has tapped them to play the role of Hush. Let's just say the villain is Hush, or there could be another character that's introduced. You get what I'm saying? So essentially, even though the Batman's actual shooting date is quite a while away, given that it's the end of the year, again, I'm saying November, it could be October, but when Robert Pattinson and, you know, when Robert Pattinson said the end of the year, Matt Reeves says, you know, the last quarter of 2025, it is looking to be on the safe side of a broad spectrum of October, November, December. I'm saying November just because would they really start up production in December to kind of close down for a week or so over Christmas? I feel like they're going to try and get wind under the sail in November. But if we're lucky, maybe October, never say never. But still, the pre-production is roughly set to begin around the spring, roughly May this year. And then around about the same time, going into June, we could be hearing our first whispers, if we're incredibly lucky, as we near the release of Superman, actually. So I can't give you concrete news on casting, but hopefully that gave you enough to be like, okay, I roughly have it bookmarked in my head of when I wouldn't be surprised when an article comes out for this said actor to play this said role in the Batman 2. But this is the year. This is finally the year, you know, I can actually say as of a few months' time, even just a few, not a handful, but a few, we should be hearing some more legit concrete things. There's no way they're pushing this movie back again. I mean, it's already coming out at the end of 2027, so yeah, we're going to be hearing some stuff. Don't worry about that, and obviously make sure you have notifications set from personalized to all on the channel so you do not miss out on that video. So up next we have from Jake Young in here saying, how do you think Batman will be fighting in the new movie? They first showed us a more angry version of Batman. Do you think after learning all things from then, will it affect how he fights from now on? I would say no, I don't think, you know, just because he's gone from, like, you know, tunnel vision vengeance to maybe realizing this, you know, being a symbol of hope for Gotham, that he's going to be a bit more, I don't know, eloquent in his fighting. However, I would like to see, you know, more areas of fighting in the sequel. I think that's just a natural development, right? We saw fighting in the first movie. I really like the MMA style of combat that Alfred, you know, taught Bruce. Again, speaking of that, would love to see the training scene that Matt Reeves said that he almost put in the first movie. Hopefully we can see Alfred sparring with Bruce in the second movie. But I still think, like, Bruce has still learned a way to fight. I don't think you dramatically just change your methodology of fighting within the span of like a month or two, just after you've had a bit of an ideological perspective change on the way you're going to be Batman. Because don't forget that after the events of the Penguin, the Batman's pretty much picking up very shortly afterwards, especially with what Matt Reeves has already teased to us with how, you know, the Penguin's going to be subpoenaed. We're going to get into that again in this video. But, like, obviously when you're tackling a new movie, I know if I was Matt Reeves, I would be like, hey, you know, compared to the first movie, or while we're not making this whole movie about spectacle, my favorite example is like Black Adam there, like the Batman's still very much so concentrating on story, but you know, we're gonna get some spectacle in there, just like the Batmobile chase scene in the first movie, or just like the action we did show at the train station, or at the end against the Riddler goons. But hey, let's step it up a notch. Let's add, I would like at least 2 more. I always put it this way. In the first movie, love the combat, but how cool would it be if we just got a couple more moments like that? So in my mind, I've always said, hey, I get that this isn't like an outright action movie, but at least give me 2 more train station equivalent scenes in the film. That would be great. And I know there's almost like a way you could look at it in how if they save that sparingly for the movie, when it hits, it will really hit because you're not getting it all the time. So they don't want to dilute the action. But again, if they really concentrate on a couple more fight scenes, that's all I want ticked off of my list. It's not too much, but it's not as little as what we got in the first movie. But hey, as what I was getting into and as per your question, I would like to feature kind of with that more cool fight scene moves from Robert Pattinson and in the choreography. Maybe implementing a gadget in there. Again, like I loved the scene in the Iceberg Lounge where he had to think fast. He used his grapple hook on one of the twins and like pulled them over. Like that's great. I need more fast thinking like that. Or even when Batman was flung into those people, he used the momentum that he had to like roll under them and side sweep them from the legs so they fell over. Like this kind of quick on your feet thinking, but like maybe more in succession, scene after scene after cut would be incredible, and I really hope that they do that. But I don't think that after learning a slightly different outlook and perspective on how to be Batman, this would dramatically affect how he fights. I guess you could say, compared to like how he was punching the living daylights out of that guy under the effects of that adrenaline shot at the end of the movie, he might not be that angry, or even at the first fight scene where he beat the living crap out of that guy to the point of where you could hear skull crunches. But Batman is still always angry, like he is still Batman, so I wouldn't want them to take away from the ferocity of the way his demeanor is in combat. Maybe like a happy middle ground here would be a bit more John Wick, if that makes sense. Like John Wick, when he fights in those movies with that great choreography a lot of the time, he's not like mega angry, he's just doing his thing. But I do worry that if you lean too much into that, taking out the kind of emotional, somewhat passion of, let's just say, Pattinson's acting under the batsuit, like having that like ferocity and that anger, or just just some kind of oomph behind his punches, is what makes it so effective and so good for any Batman, actually. So I don't know, I would love to know your thoughts on that. Would you want more of a tempered Batman, more of a John Wick demeanor, just or like Neo from the Matrix, where he's just like this, yeah, I'm just blocking all of this? Or would you like a balance? So Joseph Freaker 3639 said, Boba, I love your stuff. Thank you very much, man. And what is your gut feeling telling you about the sequel? If you had to guess, who do you think will be the big bad in part 2? Now I know this is like disappointing, like some people, but I just have to be honest, and I think I've talked about this before. I mean, God knows. I mean, I've been doing a Batman discussion series since like 2019, so I mean, I guess I wasn't talking about part 2 then. Actually, maybe I was, because we were talking about future villains, but I'm already rambling. This is what I do. I don't know. Yeah. I know sometimes people feel like they know, but if we're all...
As a teacher, I always try to do what's right. And I teach my students to always try to do what's right. And I don't think that's what Brad Schimmel is going for here. I think that Brad Schimmel is bought and paid for by Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk has pumped millions of dollars into this election to buy Brad Schimmel and to buy the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and that really scares me. That's why I'm voting for Susan Crawford.
No bullshit?
Hey, sweaty. Sweetie. You good?
Someone stole my Old Spice antiperspirant. Now I'm smelling like perspirant.
I did. Force 24/7 sweat protection.
You did this to my pits.
Welcome back to Papa John's. For a very limited time, we've got free pizza. Yo, tell them what it is.
Buy any large pizza at regular menu price, get one large one-topping pizza for free.
No, like free. Yeah, we can't do that.
Better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's.
With ourselves, I don't think any of us truly know. Like, sure, we've had ideas, like, oh, could it be Mr. Freeze? But, like, if you actually think about it, has there been anything tangible whatsoever? No. So we can definitely dismiss Clayface for now, and the reason why I say that is because we know that James Gunn and Matt Reeves had a meeting, and they described it as air traffic control because they don't want to have their Batman ideas crash into each other, right? So they would talk about what characters they're going to use, so they know what they can use in the Batverse and what they can use in the DCU's Bat-related things. So now we're getting a DCU Clayface movie. I think we can take that to mean that we are not going to get a Golden Age Clayface in Part 2 or any, shoot-off, spin-off TV show. So, who does that leave? I guess, technically any Rogues Gallery Batman villain. But really what you have to think about is it comes down to just what the popular discussion has been. And that is indeed Hush, Tommy Elliott, and maybe Mr. Freeze. And I love that idea because I would love, I know people don't like this idea at the same time, but I think I would prefer Mr. Freeze over Hush just in the sense that I think it would be, just as Matt Reeves said, maybe I'm chucking up the quote on screen right now, but he would find that a really interesting challenge because while his universe doesn't engage in as much of the fantastical, he would find it interesting as to find out how we can unwind that character and make it work here. I would love to see a rendition in Matt Reeves' lens of doing a Victor Fries trying to save his wife Nora, and since we know this microcosm of Gotham is so politically affected and its corruption and stuff, and how that corruption ripples off and affects other things. The Penguin series even got into it. The lights were turned off at Crown Point and being diverted, all that energy to the rich neighborhoods of Gotham. Like, there's so much. Imagine how you could easily implement, in a way, how Victor Fries could be affected by the systemic issues in Gotham. And sure, you might not actually have a human being at sub-zero temperature, but again, cryogenic freezing is something that is based in reality. We're not like properly there to the point of where we actually can cryogenically freeze someone and bring them back. That isn't beyond the realms of possibility of something I think Matt Reeves would indulge. I know I'm going on a Mr. Freeze tangent right now, but what I mean to say is I would find that more of a creatively nourishing kind of thing as an audience member to see how Matt Reeves would tackle that. And I wouldn't be against Hush, by the way. This is something I want to put on the baseline of this conversation. Any villain he chooses, this sounds a bit shilly. I just trust Matt Reeves. I feel like he would have chosen for a reason, and it's just going to be good, right? I think Hush, even though I couldn't tell you who is going to be the big bad in part 2, is most people's picks for this safe bet. Because what we've heard from Matt Reeves a few months ago, the most arguably biggest crumbs we've had with what he teased about part 2 is that the story, there's seeds that set up the story for part 2 that goes back to the first movie. The seeds are all there in the first one, so people will look to see what those seeds are, and it's like, damn, what could they really be? Well, one of them could have been that Easter egg, or nod, if you will, of Hush in that Riddler broadcasting where he was exposing the Waynes. Now, in reality, that was just the Riddler writing Hush on that piece of paper. So is that really like anything beyond just Riddler writing Hush? Now, obviously, that's why inherently that is an Easter egg in the movie. It's like, oh, the DiCaprio meme. Like Hush. But within the canon of the universe, it's not like Hush himself wrote Hush on that. That was just a Riddler. So is that a seed? That's something I still like
give it to you
till this day, but you could say that there is still an organic seed there for someone like Hush, because
I can't dunk on that big bitch.
If you go back to him,
his big body ass just knocked me off the air.
Everything is rooted in trauma. Every character. You could have Edward Elliot's son, Tommy Elliot, going down his own path, which ends up in a rogues gallery villain of Batman path, wanting to kind of get even for what happened to his father. Now, I think there'd need to be a ton more depth there, because, even if your father died as somewhat of a result of, Thomas Wayne's involvement, not that it was Thomas Wayne, but it was Carmine Falcone killing the reporter to really have Thomas Wayne in his pocket, to make it look like he was involved and make him look dirty. Even, like, his son, Edward Elliot's son, would still be like, well, it wasn't Bruce Wayne's fault. But again, it's not like all the Rogues Gallery characters are the most rationally minded people. So maybe Edward Elliot's, the reporter's son, grew up obsessed with Bruce Wayne as a bit of a mirror. I don't know though, because that, again, I get why people say that sounds like the Riddler, because even when you get into the Riddler Year 1 comic, Riddler and a lot of the orphans looked at Bruce Wayne and they envied him. And they were like, oh, look at this rich kid and stuff like that. So I don't know, but Hush, I think, is the one that most people are looking towards. And I'm sure Matt Reeves would make it vastly more complex. And, he's had more than enough time to figure out a special kind of clever and comprehensive, intriguing script and story for the Batman Part 2, to the point of where I doubt if it was just Hush, it's going to be like, my dad died because your dad kind of, threatened him with a hush money payment and Carmine killed him instead. But either way, whatever really happened there, I blame you, Mr. Wayne. It's not going to be that, obviously. But let's just say it's not Hush. Who the hell else could it be? Like, seriously. I don't know who it could be. I really am trying to, shake off, the preconceived notions of, oh, it's going to be Mr. Freeze, oh, it's going to be Hush, just because everyone's been saying that, or technically, yes, there was a Hush Easter egg. But if we do that and be really level-headed there, like, who is left? Everyone. Everyone's as big as the other candidate, if you think about it, right? But again, like, that's when I start exploring other candidates, it's like, would it really be Professor Pig? Like a self-contained plot of some guy trying to manipulate his victims, well, through lobotomies and making them his Dollartrons? I don't think so. And then you have, like, the ventriloquist and, you know, his dummy Scarface, which psychologically could be really interesting. But I'm willing to bet, well, maybe, who knows, I could be wrong. That wouldn't be the villain, because having somebody that smart pull off such a movie-wide plot kind of scheme over Batman that Batman, you know, needs to go on this investigation to figure out. I don't see that being the ventriloquist in Scarface, if you see what I mean. Like, again, Hush, one thing I can say about Hush, it pertains more, like, there's more I could explore and ramble about for the next 2 hours if I wanted to. That could fit in, like, the corruption thing, the deeper corruption that Batman couldn't have even imagined in the first movie, according to Reeves. It just seems more applicable to him. But maybe there's things I'm not thinking about with other villains. But yeah, ventriloquist, I mean, I don't know, man. And then, you know, other villains. Like, Harvey Dent fits in, but Harvey Dent...
I just did the glitch, let's go!
Would organically fit in as Harvey Dent first, before his decline into
man, we go right towards the roof too.
I don't want another Dark Knight where Harvey's Harvey, like White Knight, kind of Apollo, kind of, hey, you know, I'm the guy to look to for Gotham, and in the same movie becomes Two-Face. I would like to see Harvey be truly Harvey Dent, and then yeah, we'll get into that. So other candidates, Scarecrow, I would love it to be Scarecrow, I really would. It's not Julian Rush anymore, as I had originally heard about. Now, could Jonathan Crane, a fear toxin, come into play? I still don't see how that would fit into this larger corruption, unless they wanted to retread a similar story to what Cillian Murphy's... I don't know. But either way, I think I am thinking I'm not thinking outside the box enough, because one thing I will admit here, maybe I'm not thinking enough about how they could be affected and how they could still come into play with what the, you know, Gotham has done and incurred out of these people with their own kind of wrath that they'll bring upon Gotham, just like the Riddler did, and how, you know, Joker will go on to do one day. But I do admit that for now, like my metal detector, if you will, not that I am sure about this, but it does seem to be pointing more towards Hush, like some kind of continuance of the Edward Elliot Reporter storyline. Ever since I kind of got into that more, it just makes more and more sense. Like, what could Bruce and Batman not really imagine in the first movie within the parameters of this corruption that is deeper? Well, I know I've said this before, but it would be that, hey, what if the Arkhams, the story that was put out there to the press, to the point of where Riddler himself even presented it to Gotham, it's like, hey, look, Martha Wayne's parents, the Arkhams, hey, her mother killed her husband and then she offed herself, right? What if that was just the way it was presented? What if it wasn't that way? What if they were both murdered? And it looked like a murder-suicide situation, but really, it's like there's this deeper corruption that for some reason the Arkhams were killed over, and it goes back that far, and this is something that, if you're Bruce Wayne, right, you would just think that's your family history. Like this tragedy of, like, mental health, where my mum's mum killed her husband and then herself, but no, wait, now you're telling me they're murdered? What does this mean? How is this coming back to haunt Gotham in present day? That is fascinating. I could be wrong about that. Again, it could just be that Martha's parents, her mother killed her husband and then herself. But again, like, what if Martha always knew the truth? And that's why she was dragged into institutions throughout her life. And, you know, it's not that she was crazy. It's just that people were trying to silence her because she knows that her mum didn't really kill her dad. And then she didn't take her own life. It was just made to look that way. But I have to admit, right now,
2 years ago, a record number of Wisconsinites cast their ballots, changing the balance of the state Supreme Court for the first time in 15 years. Since then, the court has made decisions on important issues, like voting rights and redistricting. Now the balance of the court is once again in
I'm still by...
Nigga,
that's around my birthday, nigga. Fuck you.
Issues like the legal status of abortion,
but no, for real.
rights, and
but for real, I'm about...
Make your voice heard by voting on April
Real
1st.
birthday, July.
So it's resorts.
Sweet vacation home for your next great stay.
DQ
What you
is
trying to do
celebrating
there?
85 years. So we're giving you an 85-cent Blizzard treat in the DQ app. Now for a limited time. Hurry and get your small Blizzard treat for just 85 cents with a $1 purchase in the DQ app.
At US Cellular, you don't have to choose between a great phone and the right phone plan for you. You can get 4 free phones of your choice and 4 lines for just $90.
That's like us not having to choose between tickets to wrestling or that puppet musical.
Because you get both.
US Cellular, built for us.
Fanfiction. I don't know, but I really am trying to think about which villain it could be. But to be fair, what I was just talking about when it comes to Martha's parents, that could be more the other candidate, and that is the Court of Owls that a lot of people have spoken about. But one thing I will say, or while I wouldn't rule out the Court of Owls, is that you've got the Batman Part 2 and Part 3. And I feel like the Court of Owls, if they're to be introduced, I don't think they would be one and done in the second movie. I feel like you would have, let's just say, Tommy Elliott Hush in the second movie, the introduction and looming threat of the court, but the court to truly rise up in the third movie. Because they're just too big to do in a second movie and be defeated. But then again, this is an iteration and an adaptation of those characters in the court. And Matt Reeves could have written a story where they are found out and done. But then what is number 3? Well, number 3 could still be what I've wanted for a long time. And a low-key tease and setup of, you know, Gotham Loves a Comeback story. And Riddler and Joker breaking out of Arkham to terrorize Gotham in Part 3 and for it to really be a mad crucible for Bruce Wayne to end out the Batman trilogy. Like this all-out, okay,
5 years,
we've
don't
gone
be
through the
dead
corruption
ball.
storylines
You
of
did
Part
5
1, Part
possessions,
2,
nigga.
but
Last 3
Part
niggas like
3
not
is more
touching that
about,
ball
hey,
for
we built
series.
Batman up, the rogues have been built up as
Dead
well
ass
through Part
cat.
1
That
and
nigga's
Part
just
2,
forcing up.
Oz has risen,
He's coming
there's a
back
new
and
rogue in
shit.
Part 2, like all of these characters, but now Part 3 is just like this, you know, WWE kind of like situation where it's like, oh my god, we're just trying to live another day. I don't know, but I know I've been going on about this one for ages, but this one fascinates me. If I had to guess who I think would be the big bad villain in Part 2, if I had to guess, and I don't like having to guess because I'm that unsure, but I would say Hush. But I am equally as unsure, if I'm being honest. And what I want to do is turn this around on you. If you had to guess, who do you think would be the big bad of Part 2? And do you agree with me that in all reality, we just don't know? But with that being said, the more you look into it, the more you flick back through the pages and really try and put your head in the... Like, get rid of the rose-tinted glasses and the fangoggles. Don't think about, oh, I just want Ra's al Ghul. I want Mr. Freeze. Think about, okay, but who is Matt Reeves actually highly likely going to choose and what really fits in with the story? Don't just be like, oh yeah, I want a freaking Phantasm or something like that. Like things where it's a bit more like, okay, I get what you're saying, but it's probably not going to happen. So up next from The Harm, saying, Bobo, what about Wayne Manor and a legitimate Batcave? Has to be explored a bit. Yeah, I would say no. Believe it or not. I get it. I do get it. And I don't think it's an invalid desire to have in terms of, hey, well, in this universe, yes, Bruce is living in Wayne Enterprises, the penthouse, and what Matt Reeves has done is use the old, you know, abandoned Wayne Terminus train station, like platform, if you will, for a Batcave. So technically, the Gotham Orphanage that was once Wayne Manor, that the Waynes donated, that's since burned down, or, you know, has been abandoned. Bruce Wayne could restore it, right, and move back there, and there would happen to be a cave underneath nearby, and use that as a Batcave. I don't know. Like, the more I think about that, the more I find holes in it, and what I really think is that Matt Reeves wanted to do something a bit different. Again, ground it in his version of reality. So, hey, maybe there was a train platform for, you know, rich families, like back in the day, where it was named after the Waynes, but it's been since abandoned. But this was their way of getting into the city exclusively without being hassled. But since it's abandoned, and there's bats that live there, and, you know, it's, again, very overlooked, that could be a brilliant organic Batcave for this universe, and I think it is. I get what you mean by legitimate Batcave, because legitimate, you probably mean typical Batcave in the comics underneath or nearby Wayne Manor. Now, the reason why I say I can poke holes in it, if Bruce was to kind of revert back to what is typically seen in the comics, or if Matt Reeves was rather to change his mind there, is I don't think it makes sense within his universe, believe it or not. He can do it. But don't you think if Bruce Wayne restored the manor, it would be more awkward that he wouldn't restore it to donate it as an orphanage again? Do you see what I mean? For him to, like, restore it and be like, screw the kids, I'm moving in here with Alfred. I find that would be strange, because if anything, this Bruce Wayne, since his parents donated that as an orphanage, if anything, I think Bruce should restore it and, you know, especially as he was orphaned himself, do the very thing that his parents did when they were alive and donate it to orphans, you know? So I think for that very reason, I just don't see it happening. Again, some of you may argue with me saying, Boba, look, it's his place just because his parents did that. It doesn't mean that he wouldn't feel sentimental and want to live there again. I get your argument there, but I think it would be a bit of in poor taste for Bruce to have all this money. He lives in the penthouse. He hasn't lived there anyway. Like, don't forget that Bruce's parents donated Wayne Manor to the when they were still alive, and when Bruce moved out of Wayne Manor with his mum and dad into the penthouse. So, like, he was living in the penthouse with his so, like, Wayne Manor might not feel as homely to him as maybe some of you may think. So he might not be as attached to it as some of you may think, because the second home that he had is the penthouse he's in right now that he lived in with his mum and dad. So again, I think that's why if Matt Reeves just changed his mind and was like, okay, in between movies he restores the house and he moves in there, that's more in poor taste, I think. And I think people in Gotham would have something to say about that as well. And I'm not gonna lie, actually, to be honest, Bruce should restore it with all the money he has, and, you know, restore it as an orphanage once again. I think that would only be good press as well, and would be a cool little news report. That'd be pretty dope. And if anything, actually, I think that would naturally aid to Bruce coming out of his shell a bit more in the second movie. Again, Matt Reeves is really, you know, emphasized our existing theories already that Bruce Wayne will come out as Bruce Wayne a bit more in the second film, through saying things like Robert Pattinson, like you're gonna get to see another side of Bruce. The only other side of Bruce that we haven't seen is the actual Bruce Wayne recluse going out into Gotham in the public a bit more. So that would be a cool thing to do, right? To kind of start to integrate himself into Gotham City's public a bit more, especially with the potential bad press that he is facing after the entirety of the city will be thinking that his family, not necessarily him, but they might think the apple doesn't fall so far from the tree. But the way the Riddler presented it to the city, and we know there's a lot of Riddler followers out there, and even if you're not a Riddler follower, you might still listen to it. After hearing that Thomas Wayne got Falcone to kill Edward Elliot, Tommy Elliott's father, even though he didn't, I know I've said this 1,000 million times before, but what you have to think about is what is the news like in today's day and age. People just read headlines, they're like, oh my god, I knew they did this. You know, it's not proven, but they did this. That is what Bruce is going to technically be facing in part 2. If Matt Reeves remembers to keep the story cohesive and reflect, like, what would realistically happen, he should absolutely have Bruce Wayne, when he's going out to public a bit more, even if he's not, like, if, like, there would be reporters trying to get a comment about, hey, did you know about that your father was involved with the mob boss Carmine Falcone? Were you aware that Edward Elliot was killed trying to just write a story about Martha and the Arkhams? Like, there's going to be all of this, and then people will be questioning Bruce Wayne's integrity. Again, it makes no sense because Bruce Wayne is separate to that of his father, but in this day and age, people will just be like, hey, so do you have anything to hide yourself? I think that is really a really great recipe to start cooking the Bruce Wayne story of the second movie. He's going to be under a bit of scrutiny. I really hope that they don't neglect that, because it's such, I don't see how you can release a video like that to Gotham and not have people asking questions about the integrity of the Wayne family, and who's the one living, surviving Wayne person who is a recluse, as it is Bruce Wayne. Now, how will Bruce deal with that in the public? I have no idea. Like, how can you prove your father's innocence when this was something that happened so long ago and Carmine Falcone is now dead as well? I think the only thing Bruce can do is step out into public and make the Wayne name look good through doing good things. And that is helping restore Gotham after the floods, maybe restoring Wayne Manor back into the orphanage that it once was, and other efforts that could be helpful. You know, to show that, hey, no matter what the public believes about my father, true or not, I'm not I'm not that. I'm a good man. I'm a good man. And you guys have no idea how much I do for you at nighttime. So from Pap602, it just sucks that he's only in 5 or 6 scenes. I'm assuming you're talking about Oz Cobb for the sequel. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like he's still gonna have more of a presence than the first film. And Oz is just gonna organically, and you know, one thing I'm so happy about the Penguin series is that, don't forget, we had so much time with that character, hours and hours and hours and hours, and now he's been elevated up to that point in the comic books where, think about it, Colin Farrell's Oz Cobblepot compared to the first movie, where he was Carmine's like guy helping him get out the freaking car and escorting him into the mayor's funeral, he is now the kingpin of Gotham City's freaking criminal underworld. That is crazy. So I like how he's more of a peppered in, like, looming presence. I mean, to be fair, there were theories that he could have been the main villain of part 2. But I don't think it's going to be. So considering that we are getting a new featured Rogues Gallery villain, right? Hypothetically, we're going to get a new one, whether that's Hush or whoever. You know, Penguin can only have so much presence, so I like him being this kingpin figure to potentially have more impact as the crime saga continues, such as an impact on Harvey Dent, maybe, in place of Salvatore Maroni, if we're thinking about Harvey Dent's origin story. But yeah, all I'm saying is, I think Oz's scenes will be very scene stealer, if that makes sense. They're going to be full of presence, and I can't wait to see. It's kind of like Daredevil and Kingpin, funnily enough, in the new Daredevil Born Again series. Like, they're sat down having that, like, that talk at the diner, from what we, and I'm not saying they're not enemies, just like how Pattinson's Batman.
Wisconsin women and our reproductive freedoms face a real threat in the upcoming election, and that's Brad Schimmel. Brad Schimmel believes that a law from 1849 should be enforced, outlawing almost all abortions across the state of Wisconsin. But the good news is we have a choice. Judge Susan Crawford has a record of working to protect reproductive freedom for Wisconsinites. Please join us on April 1st and vote for Judge Susan Crawford for Wisconsin State Supreme Court.
All right, listen up. Your bosses are not happy
with your celebration dances.
So grab some cold brew, boys. You're about to learn how to make it hot. You guys got it?
Stoke cold brew coffee.
No, I promise I'd keep it classy. Everyone put your clothes back on.
Still going to be enemies, but I feel like there's going to be this new, you know, it's like Star Wars. You can't have the light side without the dark side. That's why there's a balance in the Force. I feel like Oz's criminal empire, he's going to be a scumbag piece of crap. Still the guy who killed Vic and did all these terrible things. But does he have to make a massive, crazy power move, like, right away when there's this other stuff going on with this deeper corruption in part 2? Not necessarily, but he can still be entwined in it, because after all, Oz's deeper corruption, especially with his ambitions for City Hall, with Councilman Haiti wanting to be welcome in a place like that, it's going to all tie in together, if you think about it. So I'm still down for it, looking forward to see more of Penguin, and it's not as if we're not getting a Penguin Season 2 with the way that they're exploring it right now. Now, Brutal Vengeance says, I kind of like the idea of Oz being the reason Harvey becomes Two-Face. I'd like to imagine that if it happens, then that will make Harvey and Penguin kind of hate each other, plus it kind of ties to the Arkham games, since those two had a turf war and they kind of hated each other. And what Brutal means there is essentially that, obviously with Harvey Dent's origin, back when he was kind of known as Harvey Kent, believe it or not, he had Salvatore Maroni in the courtroom throw acid in his face, and that's how he became disfigured. And no matter what, I think I preach it enough on this channel, we all know that adaptations don't copy and paste, and Matt Reeves will do his own thing, but I would really like to think that Matt Reeves would do the courtroom thing with actually, I don't know, I don't think it would be Penguin himself doing it, like on the stand, subpoenaed or anything like that, but rather somebody working on behalf of, you know, Penguin or something of that manner while he's trying to help clean up Gotham with this new anti-corruption commission, and I don't think it would happen that early anyway. That's what's happening right now with the anti-corruption commission. We're going to see that towards the beginning of the movie. They're already trying to clean stuff up in the midst and fallout of Carmine Falcone and all of his associates, which is what Councilman Haiti was on about, where they say that, you know, Penguin's going to be subpoenaed and he has to look clean as a whistle. I feel like one thing that might happen, as I got into before, is that Oz is going to worm his way out of this, but you're going to have people like BABYYYY and maybe Bruce Wayne, in addition to Harvey Dent, know that he's worming his way out of it, and so they're going to keep pushing him, and this could all contribute to a major downfall of Harvey Dent one day, but not necessarily even in the second movie. And again, as I've said before, that's not even my preference. And I think there is even, and I don't know if we're going to get this, you know, the scope of other shows. I think that was once the plan, but with the way Matt Reeves has spoken about it now, we've had the Penguin, we were going to have an Arkham series, that's no longer happening. We were going to have a Gotham PD series. That's no longer happening. So we just got the Penguin season 2. Will we have room for other shows? Matt Reeves did say that they're talking about that, but now Matt Reeves in later comments has kind of circled back around to, hey, you know, now we're just kind of talking about the Penguin season 2. I feel like a Harvey Dent spin-off series would be amazing. And that way you could get further into this legal situation that BABYYYY, as the mayor, has set up this anti-corruption commission, and no matter what, God knows what happens in the second movie, Harvey Dent is still on the front lines of that. And I can imagine this legal procedural situation, or series rather, kind of like Jake Gyllenhaal's Presumed Innocent, if any of you have seen that on Apple TV. Now, I'm not saying, you know, you're going to have Harvey Dent in that character's position, Jake Gyllenhaal's position. What I mean is the tone of that series, with how you're having this really high tension in the episodes. Harvey really trying to work the case, and the stakes are really high, and you're pissing off all the wrong kind of people at the same time. And then you get to see more of Harvey's personality start to crack and crack under the pressure that he's facing. He's starting to lose faith in the law that he's trying to uphold, and things just go awry, and he could become Two-Face by the end of it, much like how we had Oz become the Kingpin comic book version of himself by the end of the Penguin series. And then you can have Two-Face in part 3 again for this crucible with Batman, with Joker, Riddler, Two-Face. Again, that sounds a bit fanficky to be like, oh my god, all the villains are coming out against Batman in part 3, but I do see such an organic way to do Harvey Dent in not only the second movie as an intro to the character, naturally with the anti-corruption commission, and who knows what other kind of scenes he could have peppered throughout part 2, but then give him his own spin-off. But to be fair, it would have to be a really compelling actor and role to give him his own spin-off anyway. Like, Colin Farrell was the Penguin in the Batman, and it was such a transformative role for him, both physically and just acting-wise. But he's such a star at the same time. This is Colin Farrell, so it kind of makes sense to give him his own series. Whoever would play Harvey Dent doesn't just have the merit of a lot of potential story there. I think the actor and what scenes and what presence he has in part 2 would have to have that same gravitas that the audience had this fixation with on the Penguin to want to even see a series about Harvey Dent, rather than it just being like, hey, this guy's playing Harvey Dent, so we're naturally interested in him. I'm not saying that's not interesting enough almost by itself, but I do think the reason why we also got a Penguin series is because, hey, this is also Colin Farrell, and there was something magically unique going on there. So I think that's worth exploring. But, you know, carrying on this overall discussion, we have Oppenheimer 6321 saying, Reeves is definitely taking inspiration from Earth 1, specifically Volume 2, which also involves Batman, Gordon, and Dent going after corrupt city officials who were connected to the corrupt Mayor Cobblepot. Bruce's arc in this story involves him realizing that he can also help the city as Bruce Wayne, and that he needs help, something I can easily see Pattinson having a similar arc. I completely agree. And by the way, at the beginning of the comic, we have Maroni, who in this comic is a street gangster being interrogated by Harvey Dent about his relationship with Cobblepot and being asked to name corrupt people. I think the Penguin will have a similar role to this. Exactly. In the sequel, the Batman Part 2, I do completely agree that Matt Reeves has, in the first movie and in the second movie, taken some inspiration from the Earth 1 comics as well. Like, there's a whole range. And I completely agree with what Oppenheimer 6321 said. Like, that basic arc, what's going on there, even what we could even see in the first 20 minutes of Part 2, could be inspired by some of the stuff that this comic book explored. Especially when we have Oppenheimer 6321 also saying here, Boba, you might be onto something regarding Penguin in court. A quote from Matt on the series podcast, they're going to be looking at what happened, and they're going to be looking at him. He had a relationship with Falcone. He's in the drug business, and he's going to have to answer to some of these things. And he's going to be involved in some stuff that will be an entry point into the movie. And it's not the through line of the movie, except to say it's the beginning of where our story continues. Exactly. The second movie, as I said, picking up relatively short after the Penguin series, and where, again, Councilman Haiti warned him, hey man, you're gonna be subpoenaed, you're gonna have to look clean as a whistle, and the entry point will be, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the 5 or 6 scenes Colin Farrell has in the movie will be him being like, okay, I've been summoned, I've been summoned to answer some questions, I look clean as a whistle though, good luck trying to get me. And I think you're going to have the board there, like probably, you're going to have BABYYYY there, but I'm hoping, again, on that like little anti-corruption commission board, you're going to have also Harvey Dent, a casting for Harvey there, and you might see a bit of frustration on his face, because he knows there's more to this slime ball, but he's legally kind of getting out of it. So yes, very glad that we know this is basically an entry point into the movie, and this is where this whole conversation of potential going forward with at least Harvey and Penguin's continued storyline, and how that delves into the deeper corruption, the City Hall ambitions, the Two-Face potential, is all coming together. Again, it's not the through line, as Reeves said, but it's like where the story can continue. And I think the story could even continue after even part 2 has been put to bed. Because, part 2 is still going to be finishing off with an intention of a Batman part 3. Again, we're never guaranteed a part 3 because you still need to make money in the box office. But, there's still more they can do. Let me know if you agree with me, by the way. Do you want them to do a longer arc with Harvey Dent? Or would you like them to genuinely introduce Harvey in the second movie and do what they did in The Dark Knight, where even though he might not be the main villain like Joker was in The Dark Knight, and in the Batman Part 2 you could still have Hush, but you could still have Harvey become Two-Face in that same film. I think that's just too similar, and if we're playing the long game and hopefully getting a Part 3, save it for that amount of time, later to do that transformation. Or, again, if we're lucky enough and, the actor and everything's exciting enough with Harvey Dent that we saw in the second movie, and he still doesn't become Two-Face in the second movie, give us another spin-off series. This is still years and years away in the grand scheme of things. So there is a lot of time and years to have DC Studios consider another series, other plans, the expansion, and stuff like that. But I'd rather them play the long game. And this is all assuming, by the way, if we even get Harvey Dent in part 2. But I don't know how there's a part of me that's wondering, like, what if Matt Reeves doesn't even introduce Harvey Dent as Gil Colson?
Don't you know how to do Gates?
Because obviously the DA Gil Colson died in the first movie.
I need help.
I don't know how he could resist.
Not the Kennedys.
I don't know how he could resist, but if he can't resist, which I don't think he should resist, have Harvey Dent as the DA, and also just play the long game. But ladies and gentlemen, I am going to end this rambling discussion series right there. I had more questions as usual. I apologize if I didn't get to yours, if you happen to remember leaving a couple of months ago, but it has been a blast. I really enjoyed talking about it. I hope it tided you over somewhat during this dry period of Batman news, and I do apologize that it took 3 months to get this latest episode. There might be another one in a month's time because I'm going on honeymoon and I need some pre-recorded videos to go up, so maybe we can do another one then. And so, having said that, leave me any questions or ideas, theories, you name it, down in this comment section, and I'll be doing another one for when I'm away. If you liked the video, would greatly appreciate a like. Consider subscribing for more the Batman videos just like this. But until next time, guys, again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.
Why is Elon Musk pouring millions of dollars into Wisconsin? Because he's trying to buy our Supreme Court seat. For this guy, Brad Schimmel. Could Brad Schimmel be his little bitch? What do you think? Don't let Musk turn Wisconsin into a total Schimmel show.
For a limited time at Papa John's, buy any large pizza at regular menu price, get one large, one topping pizza for free.
So ladies, gentlemen, fellow Bat family out there, welcome to a brand new The Batman Part 2 discussion series video. Last time I left it around about 3 months since the prior episode, but a lot of you were like, yes, the Batman discussion series is back, so I was like, you know what, I'm not going to leave it that long again. Plus, it kind of works out. I needed content to go up on the channel while I'm away on honeymoon. So I was like, hey, you know, like, this is going to be a follow-up on the previous Batman discussion series video. Just in case you're brand new here, what we do is literally talk, theorize, cast ideas back and forth, expand on previous questions and ideas from previous videos. We just basically dive head over heels into the Batman Part 2, and if you're really ingrained in the fandom of that, I know you'll find a place here. But go ahead, leave a like on this video if you're enjoying the Batman hype train that we're trying to carry on all of our backs here in between news. And hey, if you're not already subscribed, do double check, because it turns out that over half of you who return back to my channel each and every video aren't actually subscribed, and I know lots of you say, well, I thought I was, but you might not be. You may have heard this message from me before, but the only reason I keep saying it again throughout some videos is because I get a bunch of comments of you literally saying, oh, turns out that was me. So from future Boba here, but maybe not, because this, I don't know when this is posting, and it's still past Boba technically. I need to kind of bring up that Hush tease again that I covered in a news roundup not so long ago. It's like, considering I'm releasing a Batman discussion series video that I recorded before that dropped, I need to bring this up again, and I need to get your thoughts on it to dive into it a little bit deeper here. So if you didn't tune into that news roundup, I will cover it again here. We had The Hollywood Reporter interview Peter Craig, the co-writer of The Batman Part 1, if you will, and man, this is still like intriguing to me. I don't want to really circle around too much or repeat what I said in the first video, but I needed to like still bring it up to apply to the overall speculation that we're still going to do in this video. So to read it out again here, the interviewer asks or says that the Batman certainly has some of the same DNA as Dope Thief. It seems like that movie was heavily implying that the Riddler's father was the murdered reporter Edward Elliot. You have Craig smiles. It's like, okay, he's just smiling. I don't want to get too excited there. But then the interviewer says they had similar characteristics, and the Riddler's first name was also Edward, so maybe you could say Edward Jr., right? And then the differing last names could easily be explained. But the overall idea would be that Falcone likely had a hand in creating both of these orphans, Bruce Wayne and Edward Nashton, as well as their alter egos, Batman and the Riddler. Did I misread the movie, or was the takeaway quite purposeful? And that's when Peter Craig says the way you're reading it would make some people, including Matt Reeves, very happy. It's the level of detail that was certainly discussed and thought about. It's just what he says next here, though, which is really, I think, what is the most fascinating part. So it's the level of detail that was certainly discussed and thought about, but some of that is going to spoil what I know is continuing forward. He goes on to say there was a glitch on IMDb, it looks like I'm working on a sequel right now, but I'm not. It's still Matt, and Mattson Tomlin came on, but let's just say that those ideas you're bringing up are exactly the level of detail people should be looking at, because it's a meticulously wrought world that Matt Reeves is building there. He's incredibly rigorous and incredibly detail-oriented. He is. And that was a part of the fun of working on the Batman with him. So, yes, obviously what Peter Craig said there in the latter, it's a meticulously wrought world. Matt Reeves is incredibly detail-oriented. Matt Reeves has even said to us a few months back, which is what kind of spiraled, the hype for the Batman 2 even more for me, because it was really the first crumbs we got, with him saying, in addition to this second movie being about Batman's already on this case, there's deeper corruption in Gotham that goes to a place that Batman wouldn't have even anticipated in the first film, and that the seeds of this story in Part 2 are all in Part 1. The seeds are in Part 1, and as I said in my news roundup video, one of the most obvious seeds one would go to initially is that Hush Easter egg, but there are other seeds, of course. But now, speaking of Hush, right, while I do want to make it extremely clear, Peter Craig didn't say, oh yeah, I'm going to kind of dip out of answering this question too much because you're talking about Hush, and Edward Nashton, the Riddler, is basically, an amalgamation of Hush, kind of like what has been done with Batman Hush before. He didn't exactly say that, but this is where he literally dips and says, but some of that is going to spoil what I know is continuing forward. That, to me, certainly and absolutely signifies, all without confirmation, that, you know, this is going in the direction of, at least, you know, my biggest takeaway, as I said in my news roundup, is, at the very least,
like Auntie Annie's.
That Edward Elliot kind of murder that happened from Falcone, you know, Thomas Wayne wanted Falcone to put the fear of God into him. Didn't expect Falcone to murder the guy. Absolutely not. That's not what Thomas Wayne's like, but he did it anyway. And the whole Thomas Wayne paying hush money payments prior to the murder to Edward Elliot, and he didn't take it because he was writing up that report on the Arkhams. He was like, screw you, Thomas Wayne, I'm still gonna publish the story. Like, something about this is going to be maybe occurring again in the future story of the Batman. That's why he's like, but some of that is going to spoil what I know is continuing forward, right after acknowledging what the interviewer said, that level of detail about how the Riddler's first name is similar to, well, it is Edward, like Edward Elliot, and maybe he could be
Lemonade, pet, insurance. 3 words you've probably never heard used together. A drink, your best bud, and a necessary evil. Lemonade Pet Insurance is none of those things. It's an easy way to take care of your pet's health without worrying about how much it costs. Sit, stay, and we'll tell you how it works. Every pet is different, so Lemonade lets you customize your policy to give yours the coverage they actually need. Lemonade also offers preventative care add-ons to keep
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. We just had the Avengers Doomsday Chair Watch announcement. Like, we all spent days, it seems like, watching the chairs revealed one at a time. But there were so many missing, major, really powerful characters. People just had a lot of questions, like, what happened to Tom Holland's Spider-Man? Where is Scarlet Witch? She's supposed to be in these movies. Why didn't they announce her? Everybody asking, where's Deadpool? Where's Wolverine? What about Ghost Rider? Somebody called Nicolas Cage. What about Nick Fury? Because they're all supposed to be in these movies. Most of the really big characters, we actually have a pretty good idea for what's going on between Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars with all of them, including a lot of the returning actors like the classic X-Men, the First Class era X-Men, the classic Fantastic Four, even the rebooted version of the Fantastic Four in 2015. So we'll explain what's going on with the biggest ones, the biggest questions people had on my announcement video a couple days ago. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. There are really 3 major reasons, technically 4, why they didn't announce some of these characters during their big Chair Watch announcement a couple days ago. First, the cast that they did announce wasn't the entire main cast, just a lot of them. They confirmed this right after it happened. Robert Downey Jr. went on his Instagram on the official Marvel post, and the 2 of those accounts were going back and forth about announcing more down the road, like just confirming that there would be more announcements about characters in the future over the course of them filming the movies this year. Some of the characters will probably stay secret until the trailers start coming out, and secret cameos they never wind up mentioning, and just wait for people to find out about in the movie theaters when you see it next May. Like, oh wow, big surprise, character shows up. It's going to be a giant Avengers movie, and then we have Secret Wars, another giant Avengers movie. There's always surprise cameos that they never tell anybody about. I would not be surprised if most of these leak out beforehand, though, just because it happened during Deadpool and Wolverine. Expect it to happen again during Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Reason number 2 is that most of the characters, except for Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom, are seemingly main universe MCU characters they announced who will work to stop his Doctor Doom from destroying the MCU, like they're going to try and save their main Earth. Supposedly they're going to be adapting part of the Time Runs Out comic book story for the movie. It'll be different from the comics, but the same general vibes, where you have Doctor Doom, who tries to eventually become God Emperor Doom, save the multiverse, but in doing so, winds up collapsing all the remaining Earth's fragments into a single battle world, and that's where you wind up with a bunch of multiverse characters, survivors from all these different universes.
Oh, it's a match.
Oh, that's creepy, isn't it?
Another really good example of this are all the classic X-Men actors that are coming back. They probably come back from another universe. Dr. Doom probably manipulates the events so that you wind up with an X-Men versus Avengers or Avengers versus X-Men scenario going down in the movie, but he's just pulling the strings from behind the scenes. They're changing a lot of mechanics about the way this goes down, but you get the idea. He looks like Tony Stark, like their friend who died during Avengers Endgame. He'll be using that to his advantage during the movie to accomplish his plan. So at some point, he is going to learn about the MCU universe because he'll have to learn that his Tony Stark was a hero to this world. They might just wind up using the Void as a version of Battleworld because it already kind of functions that way in the MCU right now, where it's sort of like a dumping ground for a bunch of different universes across the multiverse. There will be a number of multiverse characters, returning actors like big stars who will be part of his team that he brings from the multiverse. We're calling them an evil Avengers team. They might not think of themselves as evil, but they're basically like a multiverse team that he puts together to accomplish his goal when he comes to the MCU. Chris Evans is supposed to be part of that. Scarlett Johansson might also be part of that too. All the original Avengers actors are coming back in some form. Some of them are coming back as their regular characters in the MCU because they're still alive after Avengers Endgame, but some of them died, some of them got really old and retired, so the younger versions of the actors who are coming back will just be multiverse versions of their characters. They didn't want to completely reveal every single character that was going to be on Doctor Doom's team yet. Like, they'll probably be saving that for much later, where it's like a Captain America Civil War kind of scenario where they revealed Team Iron Man, then they eventually revealed Team Captain America. This time it'll be Team MCU and Team Doctor Doom. Third major reason is that some of the people in the movie will only be minor characters, like briefly referenced, blink and you'll miss it, barely in the film. Spider-Man is a really good example of this. Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4 movie is supposed to take place during the events of Avengers Doomsday, and supposedly, if rumors are to be believed, that'll explain why he's not a huge character during Doomsday, because they're releasing Spider-Man 4 right after Doomsday is released in theaters. So that'll just explain the whole timeline, like, where was Spider-Man? And then boom, Spider-Man 4 comes out, and this is what Spider-Man was doing that whole time.
If this makes the movie, I'll be so impressed.
Here it is, look.
Timeless as baseball. Must evolve. Only you can control your journey's evolution. That's a base hit! It's a whole new ballgame. How will your journey evolve?
For Doctor Doom to show up in Spider-Man 4 in some way, even if he's not a major character. They have the whole Spider-Man and Iron Man relationship they probably want to play on with the twist of the Doctor Doom reveal. But I do think that Tom Holland's Spider-Man will be a bigger character during Secret Wars, so the end of Spider-Man 4 will set up how he winds up in Secret Wars, why he winds up surviving the collapse of the multiverse and winds up on their Battle World Void, or whatever they wind up calling it. So they might just give him a small cameo role in Doomsday, or like in the post-credit scene, or like the very end of the movie, like flash, blink and you'll miss it. So he's not completely left out, but he'll have the mask on, because Tom Holland is also filming another major Christopher Nolan movie, the Odyssey movie, this year, and he has to film Spider-Man 4 right after that. So he's going to be pretty busy filming stuff, which is why it's much easier to put Spider-Man in the mask and have a stunt person play whatever role he needs to have in Doomsday. Fourth major reason, obvious one, they didn't want the chair watch to actually last all day. Like, the memes started immediately. Like, how long is this going to take? Are they going to go on all day? We could be here for days on end. If they revealed like all 500 characters are going to be in the movie, we would still be waiting for the reveal to finish today, many days later. A lot of the social media managers behind Marvel that were responsible for this whole chair watch event came out and basically explained that they wanted to capture as much attention as possible for up to that 5-hour period. And Marvel actually was successful. Like, we all clowned on it because it was very clown worthy. but the live stream that Marvel did was the most watched live stream from any movie studio in the history of the world. It got about 275 million views, which is wild. 275 million people talking about Marvel for 5 hours on that day. So their trick worked. Now please, Marvel, do not ever try that again. The chairs will return during Secret Wars. I can see it now during the post-credit scene for Avengers Doomsday. The chairs will be back. So now there are a number of super powerful characters like Scarlet Witch, White Vision. What about some of the other returning Avengers actors? What's going on with them? I just explained what's going on with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. My assumption is that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire might also come back for Secret Wars too, and they won't be big characters during Doomsday. Deadpool and Wolverine, similar case. They're supposed to have some minor role in Doomsday, but I think they're mostly meant to be bigger characters during Secret Wars.
You know the Avengers discovered Stormer.
Scarlet Witch is supposed to be in Doomsday, but I didn't think they want to completely give away the fact that she's back or have to explain how she returns yet. Like, they want it to be a big surprise. Oh my god, Wanda, she's still alive. How does she survive Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? Supposedly when she comes back, she'll be helping Doctor Doom, so she'll return as part of his evil team. And they'll be adapting a little bit of the Children's Crusade storyline, where she loses her memory and he gaslights her and uses that to his advantage so that he can use her powers to accomplish his goal, and she doesn't really understand what she's doing is wrong. It's sort of a way for Marvel to have their cake and eat it too. They kind of did a version of this during Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, except she was completely aware that what she was doing was wrong at the time. This time, she will not be aware that what she's doing is wrong. It'll probably work with Billy and Tommy's arc, where they're basically trying to rescue her and bring her to her senses. Like, no, you're our mother. Please, don't destroy our universe. White Vision is also supposed to be back, but they'll explain what happens to him next in the MCU during the Vision Quest series, which they're filming right now, and they're going to release episodes for next year, but I don't think they're going to release the episodes till after Doomsday, so I don't think they want to spoil what happens to White Vision. They might just save him in terms of Avengers movies for Secret Wars. I already kind of explained Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson coming back. They'll be back, but probably as multiverse versions of the characters working with Doctor Doom and his evil Avengers team, or whatever they wind up calling that team. Bruce Banner Hulk is supposed to be in the movie, but I think they're doing a lot more Hulk multiverse stuff during Secret Wars, so they could just be saving a lot of his storyline for Secret Wars too, because it is super expensive for them to do Hulk special effects, and I think they want to get really crazy with a lot of the stuff they're doing in Secret Wars. There was a little concept art that leaked out from Secret Wars a while ago. I did a video on. One of those was for the Greenland arc on the Secret Wars Battle World, where you basically have an entire part of the world filled with Hulk multiverse variants. We will see what they wind up doing from that. Hopefully they do a version of Maestro. I don't know who would play that. It could be Edward Norton, it could be Eric Bana, they could be bringing back anybody for that, or Mark Ruffalo himself could play a version of the Maestro during Secret Wars. Hawkeye also going to be back, but if you remember, he basically asked to take one of the last Avengers movies off. He's like, can you give me Infinity War off for a break? Just bring me back for Endgame. They might do the same thing for Secret Wars and Doomsday, where he's just in one of the movies, not the other.
No, I heard that you were meaning to get in touch with me.
Chili's Scranton branch is open for the first time.
Here, our Triple Dippers are as famous as our modern 2005 Chili's decor.
Head in with your Scranton office co-workers for any occasion, like your Scranton office award show.
Those are big here.
That's what she said.
Enjoy legendary Awesome Blossom. They're back only at Chili's Scranton.
Back? As in, I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back. Chili's, baby back.
Chili's Scranton, now open for business.
Also supposed to be back as another version of Thanos, maybe King Thanos. I don't know if we're going to see him in Doomsday or just in Secret Wars. He might just be in Secret Wars. Really hoping they go for this panel here where God Emperor Doom just rips his spine right out of his body. Moving on, there are a ton of other classic X-Men and classic Fantastic Four that they didn't announce as part of Chairwatch. They announced a ton of classic X-Men, but you have Halle Berry's Storm, one of the most powerful Omega-level mutants. Why wouldn't you announce her? Probably because she's either just in Secret Wars or she's also on Doctor Doom's evil team. There's Rogue, another super powerful mutant. Jean Grey Phoenix, also one of the most powerful characters in the multiverse. Like, what were you going to be doing with Phoenix during these movies? She also might just be back during Secret Wars. You have people like Iceman, another Omega level mutant. There are a lot of those classic X-Men they'll probably just save for Secret Wars. Like, not every single one will come back during Doomsday. There's the younger first-class versions of all the characters, but remember, they canonized those to the main X-Men universe. They're just literally like the 1960s versions of all those characters. They're probably just saving Michael Fassbender, Magneto, James McAvoy, Professor X, the rest of those characters, or most of those characters, for Secret Wars as well, too. There's the classic Fantastic Four characters. We already saw Chris Evans come back as his younger Johnny Storm, or slightly older Johnny Storm from those movies in Deadpool and Wolverine. We will probably see some of the other classic Fantastic Four actors show up in either Doomsday or Secret Wars, but my bet is Secret Wars. Mostly because in Doomsday, the main Fantastic Four characters will be the brand new versions that we meet later this year. Like, they're meant to be really big characters in both Doomsday and Secret Wars, so the other Fantastic Four actors from the classic movies will probably just be lesser characters in Secret Wars. I'm also expecting at least 1 or 2 cameos from the 2015 Fantastic Four versions, the Josh Trank versions of the characters. We will see. Generally just expect the really wild cameos to be saved for Secret Wars, like Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider, who is supposed to come back for Secret Wars, but probably not for Doomsday. For people asking about super powerful characters like Thor's surrogate daughter, Gore's daughter, Love, she probably will not be back. Like, Marvel will probably just like quietly put her off in the distance. Like, no, we're not going to be bringing her back. She was played by Chris Hemsworth's real-life daughter. That was how she wound up in that movie.
What is that?
The pan flaps from Earth.
I'm not expecting Zeus or Hercules or the other gods from Thor Love and Thunder to show up, but the Thor Corps is supposed to have some kind of role during Secret Wars based on the Jonathan Hickman run, so we will see how they handle that. They could literally do Thor Corps by just copying Chris Hemsworth and making a bunch of multiverse versions of his face in the computer. We'll probably get some more Inhumans cameos during Secret Wars again, and Daisy Johnson, Clark Gregg, and Ming-Na are supposed to come back as their characters from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it might not be until Secret Wars. But I have seen reports that they're supposed to come back. I don't know how many of the other Marvel TV characters will come back, just the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. people I've heard about, and Daredevil. Daredevil's supposed to have some minor role during Doomsday or at least Secret Wars. I don't know about the other Defenders characters. I'm not expecting all of them because I do think that they want to rely more heavily on like some really big classic X-Men, classic Fantastic Four stuff, and other classic actors like Nicolas Cage, Ghost Rider. The way that Marvel's been talking about Secret Wars, they're going to be using it to soft reboot things. Like, it's another ending of sorts to the MCU as you've known it, and all the Marvel movies, and they're supposed to be doing a bigger version of what they did in Deadpool and Wolverine, where they use Secret Wars as an endgame for a lot of the classic X-Men and Fantastic Four, other Marvel actors outside the MCU, when they never got their chance to have their own version of Endgame. Like a real big goodbye to all those classic actors before they introduced the rebooted X-Men movie inside the new version of the MCU post-Secret Wars. So what will probably happen is we'll probably hear about the different bigger actors and characters piecemeal as they're filming this year. Like so-and-so, like Scarlet Witch was spotted on set filming for Doomsday, like confirming which of them will be in Doomsday and which of them will be in Secret Wars. They're making both of those next Avengers movies the same way they made Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, mostly back-to-back so that they can release both movies 1 year at a time. Personally, I am feeling very, very bad for all of the visual effects artists that have to race to get all those movies. That just imagine how many effects they're going to be in both of those movies are so big. Generally though, if you're not a big comic book reader, I would recommend you checking out Time Runs Out and then the Jonathan Hickman Secret Wars run. Those will be like the best examples of stuff that they'll pull from. It won't be exactly like the comic book plots, but that's kind of what they're going for, that vibe in those stories. It would be a crime against humanity if they didn't let Samuel L. Jackson drop a couple F-bombs in these movies. We will start getting some more footage for Avengers Doomsday really soon though, so whatever winds up getting released, of course I will do videos about it. And we're in the middle of Daredevil Born Again episodes. We're almost done. We just saw a whole bunch of him in the black suit with the double Ds. Yes, everybody is a pervert talking about double Ds, but also really excited because we're really talking about Daredevil with the Daredevil symbol on his chest finally. Years and years later, everybody posed the Deadpool and Wolverine. It only took 20 billion years for them to finally do the double D's on his chest. I will probably do a video for all of that footage tomorrow, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everybody click here for my Avengers Doomsday trailer that they just released, and click here for all of my Daredevil episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
As director of an alternative school, Brittany Kinzer cut corners by using unlicensed teachers. The school where Kinzer was director even employed an unlicensed teacher with a gun conviction. The school was forced to admit their mistake after the teacher was charged with molesting a 5-year-old child. Brittany Kinzer's reckless policies put students in danger. Jill Underley puts our children first. As a teacher, principal, and superintendent, Jill Underley for State School Superintendent.
Pranced around the city in a Halloween costume, beating the snot out of bad guys. Hey, thank you for your service.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Daredevil Born Again Episode 4 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references. Punisher finally came back. Welcome back, Frank. We finally saw a full-on view of the comics. He's meant to be the main villain of the season. Not to be outdone in his own game, though, Kingpin revealed his special happy place, his secret torture basement, and what really happened to Adam earlier this season. If you're brand new to the channel, I'm doing videos for all the episodes. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. The episode title was Sic Semper Systema, which is a Latin phrase that basically means so always the system, which is a reference to the breakdown of the police system, the justice system, which is what his client is saying during the episode. Like, the system is working against him his whole life, so things are just this downward spiral for him. You could also point to his conversation that he has with the Punisher, where Frank talks about the broken system of it all, like your system breaking down again, haha, don't you kind of expect this? Kind of sounds like a phrase that the Punisher would have on his mind too, like he is also against the system. But also a reference to the broken police system that allowed White Tiger to be killed by these corrupt cops, the group of cops that have co-opted the Punisher's logo, which they finally start to dig into a little bit, with Punisher acknowledging what's going on. Although he doesn't really seem like he cares that much about it right now, but that might be a misdirect. When Matt runs into the Punisher, we find out that he's been planning another hit. He's going to take somebody down, but we don't know who that is yet. I'm assuming they're going to reveal that before the end of the season, and that might have something to do with the Punisher special presentation that they're doing next year alongside Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Is part of them bringing Punisher back from the Netflix series. Now, they canonized stuff a long time ago, so it was always meant to be canon. So it's one thing for them to say that they're working on bringing the Defenders back. It's another to see them walking around, interacting with the characters on screen in brand new episodes. So a lot of this is like the beginning of more Punisher stuff happening inside the MCU, like just early days. In another connection back to the original Punisher Netflix series too in this episode is that the showrunner for Daredevil Born Again that Kevin Feige brought on to sort of right the ship, basically fix the show in the episodes that we're seeing right now, was the original producer on that Netflix Punisher series. So even without Frank himself in the episode, Punisher himself in the episode, there was a lot of Punisher DNA built into Daredevil Born Again just in general. But he is meant to be a critical character this season, like it's not just a couple of cameos, he's actually a big part of the rest of the season. This is actually pretty crazy too. Jon Bernthal just revealed that he actually turned down the opportunity to come back in Daredevil Born Again in the original version of the show before they had their big creative reboot. The way that Jon Bernthal described it, the writing was basically terrible on that original version of the show, and the fans would have absolutely hated what they did with the Punisher character. So apparently they fixed a lot of stuff with Punisher on the show, and that's why he agreed to do it. Also, he wrote a lot of his own scenes too, like he changed a lot of his scenes himself. The episode begins in the aftermath of White Tiger's death at the hospital as they're taking care of his body, bagging up all of his belongings that were on his body when he was killed, including his suit and his amulet. In the comics, it was his niece Angela that took up the mantle from him in the amulet next, who we see run into the hospital right after this, but she's clearly very little girl, probably a couple years away from actually putting that amulet on. But that's basically the next White Tiger staring at you in the hallway here. Matt clocks that he was killed by a custom bullet at close range, but the hospital doesn't know about it. He doesn't find till later until he learns the Punisher's logo is on it, and that leads him to find Frank. But at this point in the episode, he didn't know the Punisher cops existed because he literally cannot see the tattoos on their bodies. He's blind. Otherwise, he would have immediately known the connection, like, oh, you all have Punisher tattoos on.
Logo I found on the bullet casing.
When they leave the room, notice he has Hector's belongings, including the amulet with him, so he can give it to his family, and eventually his niece will take it up. We will see if they ever reference that again in the future of the show. His niece seems very precocious, like they really want to lean on the fact that someday she'll be so pissed off, like she'll continue to have that chip on her shoulder, so pissed off about what happened to her uncle, that she will pick up the mantle and try to carry out justice in his name. This is how the origins of a lot of street-level vigilantes in the MCU work, where they're inspired by tragic events in their lives. Like, this is a defining event for her. When Matt mentions believing someone will find White Tiger's killer eventually, he's talking about Punisher and himself. They are those guys that will find out who did this. We go to a shot of one of Muse's murals. This time it's of Kingpin. The light and the darker halves are meant to be a metaphor for the entire episode, where both Daredevil and Kingpin's darker halves start to emerge more. They literally reference that during their Heat diner scene when they were talking about their darker halves. They show Muse's other Punisher art that we saw previously in an earlier episode to foreshadow him showing up later in the episode. Also Muse himself showing up in the episode. We finally see him in costume. He looks like he's right out of the comics, taking another one of his victims down into his lair to turn him into another piece of artwork. So in the comics, he uses people to make art, gruesome sculptures, murals with blood, every type of art you could possibly make with people's body parts. But in the comics, a lot of his victims are Inhumans. On the show, I don't think they're doing that part. They're not getting into the Inhumans part of it. They're just meant to be regular people that are his victims. I don't know if Muse on the show also has the same special powers that he does in the comics. In the comics, he has the ability to block Daredevil's radar sense, so Daredevil's abilities don't work when he's fighting him. It's just way harder for him to take Muse down. As we saw earlier, Muse is meant to be this character whose name is Bastion on the show, played by Hunter Doohan from Wednesday, who asked Heather Glenn to become his therapist, but we haven't really pushed that storyline forward yet. Like, we haven't seen Heather Glenn with him yet. There are a couple references she made at the end of the episode to crazy cases that she had during the day that she had to deal with. And I think in addition to her alluding to meeting with Kingpin and Vanessa, them being her clients, I think she was also alluding to meeting with Muse's character too. But she doesn't know that this Bastion character is Muse. During the opening credits, they make a minor change. They added John Bernthal's name because he's debuting in this episode. BB is working Daniel Blake up, like she's trying to butter him up so she can get closer to Kingpin. Very clear what she's doing here, like she has him wrapped around her finger pretty tightly. Seems like he's going to continue spilling his guts to her. Even after what happens in this episode, I'm sure she'll continue to work him up and down. She gets him blabbing about Kingpin's secret meetings, the new recycling company that they talk about later in the episode that he winds up having to cancel, and she reports on basically outing Kingpin as a big union buster, trying to turn the city against him, like a very negative piece against him. When they go outside the club, you see another one of Muse's murals, this time of White Tiger, titled Vigilante Justice, R.I.P. White Tiger. She makes a Captain Planet reference, which is funny because Don Cheadle's Rhodey in the MCU also played Captain Planet in a parody skit. He was like a really hardcore R-rated version of Captain Planet back in the day. We see a couple regular cops show up to arrest this guy that Matt Lynn later helps in the episode, where we get the title of the episode just in general, where he talks about the breakdown in the system. Arrested for stealing some treats from a bodega. Then the next day, as the sun is coming up, Daredevil's on the rooftop thinking about White Tiger, his Daredevil what Karen said to him when she left, like, you should be Daredevil again, which is basically him just hinting that he'll put the costume back on, as we see at the end of the episode too, when he unfurls his secret hiding place where he keeps a bunch of his costumes. He gets the call from Kristen McDuffie, who puts him on the new case for Leroy Bradford, the person that was arrested for stealing those treats, sending him downtown. There's a little bit of exposition during their conversation, too, about securing a bank as a new client. I think that's setting up the cameo scene from Kamala Khan's father, too, in a later episode. But I don't know which episode that's going to wind up being. But I think that's why he was talking about banks. She mentions having trouble with the Madison case. That'll also probably wind up being in a future episode, too. Then we get Kingpin and Vanessa in another therapy session talking all about Adam, her lover, and there's a lot of talk about him. Like, they go on and on and on specifically about Adam. So even before they reveal him at the end of the episode, I was pretty confident, like, oh, they're probably going to show us what happened to him. the Kingpin has been keeping him in some kind of torture basement this whole time. Later in the therapy session, there are also specific lines of dialogue about not knowing where he went. Like, we have no idea what happened to him in a weird way. So just very clearly teeing up the end of the episode where they reveal what happened to him. Feels like this is also confirmation for why his knuckles are always bloody episode to episode, because he's been beating the crap out of him on the regular and enjoying some fine dining while watching him thrashing himself against his bars there. There's a lot to unpack in that Kingpin scene at the end of the episode. Don't worry, we'll get to that too, because he also has his painting wrapping in a snowstorm with the blood from Season 3 still on it. That's his blood from the end of Season 3 in this Daredevil fight. When Vanessa reveals that Adam was an artist, she's an art dealer, so that kind of tracks she'd be drawn to that kind of person. I also feel like Kingpin left the meeting and promptly crushed both of Adam's hands, if he hadn't already, given how much Vanessa said she loved his hands. I also think Vanessa probably knows what really happened to Adam, because we've actually seen trailer scenes where they're both having dinner in front of that painting inside the torture basement. So it seems like at some point they both get on this weird kink watching Adam be tortured. Feels like a very Kingpin kind of thing to do, like really getting off on watching people being tortured. Then there's a moment where it seems like Vanessa is going to get her hooks into Heather Glenn in the way the Kingpin basically twists other people to his will, like bends them to his will. Just seems like the vibe here is that Heather Glenn is underestimating Vanessa, thinking that she's not in control, like, oh, is he hurting you? Is he doing anything bad to you? What's going on? And in reality, Vanessa is the real danger here in this therapy group of theirs. Like, even though Kingpin is a very terrifying person, she is a very manipulative, very smart person. So it just seems like at some point she's going to wind up manipulating Heather Glenn. Maybe that will spill over into the Kingpin and Daredevil stuff, because remember, Vanessa also knows that Matt Murdock is Daredevil. She'll probably figure out at some point, if she doesn't already know, that Heather Glenn is going out with him. We get another BB report. It's the same dude from last week's episode who talks about why he thinks New York City needs vigilantes, why he wants to be a vigilante himself. Like, if I wasn't so old, I'd be out there on the streets myself as a vigilante. Matt then goes to meet Leroy Bradford at the police station, accused of stealing those snacks from the bodega. Fiddle Faddle is an actual real-life brand, too. Like, you can actually go out and buy that right now. There are a couple of funny moments during this, too, where, like, he tries to blame the Skrulls for the theft. Matt, not amused, not laughing. But the real comedy here is this is probably an actual problem in the judicial systems of the MCU in every country. Anytime anybody is accused of something in the MCU, like killing someone or stealing something, they could just blame it on like a ghostly apparition. Like, oh, a ghost stole it, or it was an act of magic, or like an alien god came and did this, killed this person, not me. And what are the court systems going to do against that alien god-like creature or that ghostly apparition? There's nothing they could do about it. They literally just addressed this on the Invincible TV show during Season 3, where in the Invincible universe, the prosecutor from the city basically said, look, dude, what do you want us to do? He's basically the most powerful person on the planet. We couldn't arrest him if we tried. So basically it was them saying in the Invincible universe, characters like that, super powerful characters, are really above the law. Not just in metaphor, they are literally and metaphorically above the law. Whereas in the MCU, they try to skirt that line a little bit. Like the whole Skrull line was a bit of a reference to that. Like, it was a Skrull that did this. Arrest the Skrulls.
Could it have been a Skrull?
You'll still have common days. But this is not one of them. A few weeks a year and you'll discover the most uncommon time of your life.
Hey, it's your dry skin. Help me lock in moisture now and feel it long after with CeraVe Daily Moisturizing Lotion.
What job, lady?
You died and went to hell. Now you hunt demons. For the devil.
1, 2, 3, 4, happening easy.
You're stuck in this out for how long?
Run!
So hell runs out of demons. Step on, we're skipping school.
Did you take our son along for a demon fight yesterday?
I'm just trying to do something nice here.
This spring, it's not enough to just play the claw. You must be the claw. Introducing the Human Crane and all new arcade games, now only at Dave & Buster's.
Like, imagine a Celestial shows up and destroys part of the Earth. They're not going to try and arrest the Celestial. So it's all to say that trying to be a lawyer inside a superhero universe where magic and all these things exist would be a complete nightmare. Leroy refuses to take a plea deal and wants to go to jail to serve the lesser sentence because he'll get out faster, so they introduce Sophia, one of the prosecutors. Matt mentions Latvian Heritage Day, Latvia, Doctor Doom references. It just feels like they're making a bunch of Doctor Doom references in this episode because we're literally about to see Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom show up during the Fantastic Four movie, Avengers Doomsday, Avengers Secret Wars next year. We are right about to get as much Latvia Doctor Doom as you'd ever want to get the next couple years. She reveals she's Latvian. Matt used his supreme senses to smell Latvian treats on her. There's a little bit of witty banter, like she gets pretty horny on Maine for him, the way that all women are kind of horny for Matt. And in the hallway, he hears Powell again, who he accuses of being the one to kill White Tiger. It wasn't him, it was another cop higher up on the ladder inside the department, but Powell is connected to him. But the way he listens to him using his radar sense, Powell has no idea who actually killed White Tiger. So I think the idea they're teasing here is that the Punisher cops, like these corrupt cops, are a very wide net, and it's very compartmentalized, so not all of them are on the same page about everything. Like, it's not a small club where they all talk to each other about everything they're doing. My assumption early on is that the person at the top of that chain who's calling all the shots, like the lead corrupt cop, will be the person that the Punisher has actually been after this whole time. Matt also flat out challenges him too, implying that Powell's gonna eventually try to find him later with way more dirty cops next time. Like, next time I'm gonna get you with way more people to help me. Down at the docks, they have a moment where Kingpin basically shows off his plans to completely remake the docks at Red Hook, like completely clean the place up, and how he hates red tapes, permits, and dealing with the city council. So it just sounds like they really want to push him in a more Kingpin direction where he just points at stuff and tells people to do whatever he wants them to do. Damn the permits. Also feels like he's going to squeeze everybody at City Hall until they just do whatever he tells them to do. God Emperor Kingpin just ordering his will be done around New York City eventually. Buck also reminds him about the gangs fighting amongst themselves. That'll probably continue to be a bigger thing in the later episodes this season, where like eventually he will do something about that. Then Leroy and Matt have that conversation about how the whole system is broken, basically giving the episode its title. And a lot of the problems that he points out, the hypocrisy of everything and how the police are spending 5 times the cost of the stuff he stole just to lock him up, doesn't make sense, is a huge waste of money. That's all stuff that happens in real life too. Like, that's actually a very common phenomenon. There are a couple of funny, awkward scenes with Kingpin too in the episode where like he sits in front of a bunch of kids singing to him the Jefferson Starship song. It looks like he's about to crawl out of his skin, like he just cannot stand being in front of all these kids. Daniel Blake sees that BB is predictably reported on all the stuff that he spilled his guts about with the garbage, the plan for the unions, making them cancel Kingpin's meetings for the garbage plan, setting up a couple different plot points. Like there's the Daniel stuff that's going on between him and Kingpin, their relationship, and his relationship with the other aide too, who seems like she can't wait for both of them to be gone. Like, I was here before you showed up, I'll be here after you're gone. As you would expect, Kingpin blows his stack when he finds out what happened as they go to the Latvian Cultural Center for Heritage Day. More Doctor Doom Latvia references.
New mask. Same task.
There weren't a ton of legit Doctor Doom references, like actual like visuals of Doctor Doom or anything like that, but I just feel like that was the whole reason why they referenced Latvia so much in this episode, like several times. There's the funny moment with them singing the Latvian cover of the Jefferson Starship song where he has to listen to it again, basically just showing how he's getting so pissed off at having to deal with all the day-to-day of being mayor, like all the indignities, all the meetings, all the things that he doesn't want to be stuck doing. Then the whole deal here with Daniel Blake admitting to leaking the information and Kingpin relenting and basically looking at him like he's taking him under his wing even more, I think is the idea that Kingpin kind of views Daniel as a young version of himself, so he's already kind of predisposed to forgive him. But also I think in the fullness of time when he says he'll make him a better man, it also sounds like Kingpin will twist Daniel into another version of Wesley, like a clone type character, or another version of Kingpin, like he'll become just like Kingpin eventually, if he doesn't die. Usually characters on arcs like that go one of two ways. They either wind up getting killed in some tragic event, or they wind up becoming just as bad as the person that's mentoring them, in this case Kingpin. And at least right now, Daniel Blake kind of seems like he's an idiot, so we'll see. Usually characters that are idiots on arcs like this wind up getting killed off, but he might wind up surviving to season 2, we'll see. They go back briefly to the same Muse White Tiger mural, and we get another BB report speaking out against Kingpin and his plan for the garbage. Daredevil goes to the crime scene where White Tiger was shot, uses radar sense to find the shell casing, and realizes the Punisher's logo is on the bullet, going to find Punisher and ask him about what's going on with this. Here's the thing with this too, it seemed like he knew exactly where to find Punisher, and it wasn't like it was in some convenient place. Like, it takes him a while to work his way into this very, very secluded room in a basement of an abandoned building. How would he know how to find him so quickly if he didn't already know where he was? So it seems like this whole time, like for a long time, he's known exactly where Punisher's been hiding out. But at least the way they played in the episode, their reunion, they haven't talked to each other literally in a long time. Seems like they haven't talked since the end of Daredevil Season 2. There are a lot of questions about what happened during the 5-year time jump because the Echo scene of Daredevil in Episode 1 was from the 5-year time jump. So if Daredevil was very active during the 5-year time jump, Kingpin was very active during that period, you also wonder what was Punisher doing during the 5-year time jump. Maybe we'll get some clues about that in future episodes. My assumption he was just doing the same thing that Hawkeye was doing as Ronin, just going after the worst of the worst during that period. As he enters, Punisher attacks him promptly, just looking completely unhinged. He's taking some kind of meds. I didn't see what writing was on the actual bottle there, but you could write it below in the comments if you think you know what it was. Looks like he's got a few city miles on him. He's got a cut under his eye, so he's been in a recent fight with someone. And when Daredevil asks him about the Punisher shell casing, the way that Frank talks about it, he calls them fanboys of his, and his first real reaction to them is that he doesn't care about the dirty cops. Like, it's not my problem, who cares? Matt tries to give him a bit of a call to action, helping out, like doing some service, and then he obviously makes fun of Matt because Matt was not in the military. Like, have you actually done any real service? Which is a reference to being in the military. He jokes about Matt, calling his Daredevil activities prancing around in a Halloween costume. Notice the full-on Charlie Day conspiracy board behind him covering the walls too. Seems like he's been very busy since we last saw him. The way the Punisher explains it, he has been after a target. He's been planning to take someone down. And I think early theory is that it will be the person who actually did kill White Tiger, the one in that Punisher body armor. When he says he did help once, he was downrange. He calls him Red, like he refers to him as Red a couple different times, which is a callback to Daredevil Season 2 and the finale where he helped him downwind with the hand with his big gun.
See you around, Red.
So they use a lot of this conversation to sort of catch you up with the Punisher, especially for like brand new audiences that haven't seen him before. Like, oh, this is what's going on, this is the dynamic, the vibe between them, but also to longtime fans referencing the events of Daredevil Season 2. Then he takes Matt to task, saying that he wants to hurt someone Punisher style and wants his permission, like he feels guilty about it and wants forgiveness for what he's about to do, which I think is even a little bit of a callback to Daredevil Season 1 episode, like the very opening scene of the first Daredevil series where he's meeting with the father saying that I'm not asking for forgiveness for something that I've done, I'm asking for forgiveness for something that I'm about to do. Punisher invokes his dead son, R.I.P., and how he's still haunted by his memory, and how that's basically the thing that drives him, like that's his driving force, the trauma that keeps him going. They have a nice chat about grief and how the system is broken, calling back to the conversation he had with Leroy about the system being broken. Punisher brings up Bullseye and invokes Foggy's memory, R.I.P., still kind of wondering what's going on there, like maybe there'll be some secret reveal, we'll see about that. But they just keep referencing Foggy a lot, and Bullseye, because we're also probably going to see Bullseye come back on the show soon. But the other confirmation here is that Punisher knows everything that happened to Foggy, like he's clued up on everything that went down. Matt leaves, but this is just the beginning of the Punisher coming back, like eventually they will meet up again, they will team up to take on these dirty cops. Back at the Mayora mansion, Vanessa and Kingpin talk about their therapy session, the general state of their marriage. Generally seems like it's okay, like they're slowly coming back to the same page as Kingpin is starting to get darker and darker again. And at least in general, it seems like he appreciates that Vanessa is also way darker herself now too. There are a couple of funny moments too, like a couple of moments where you're like pointing at the screen. He says the line, like he said the thing, when I was a boy, and talks about his father a lot. Says he learned some of the best and the worst lessons from him, like how to do all the bad stuff, but also how to do all the good stuff too. And one of the lessons that he never learned was forgiveness. Like his father never forgave anyone for anything. which is meant to foreshadow his part of the ending of the episode with Adam in that torture dungeon. Definitely not going to forgive for what happened with Adam. Matt goes back to Heather Glenn and they get it on. She does hint at her therapy sessions with Kingpin and Vanessa, but doesn't say their names. And they basically cut both of their ending scenes together where they go back and forth between their different moments. So Kingpin's walking down the steps into his torture dungeon, and then Matt going up the stairs into his secret hiding place where he keeps all of his suits. We see Kingpin walk past his painting, Rabbit in a Snowstorm, stashed there with all that really expensive looking wine. Still got the blood on it from the end of season 3, like I said, and proceeds to have some fine dining in one of those expensive wines while just enjoying Adam tortured in that cage there. Kind of seems like a very reverse Hannibal Lecter situation where he's so calm and collected, just enjoying his meal, watching this grisly thing happen in front of him. Sort of like the tortured Adam has become a living art piece, so to speak. You could also draw a parallel to what Muse is doing, turning his victims into literal art as well too. We'll get to that in a second. Matt goes to his secret stash. You see all of his 5 different suits. These are the ones that they're based on from the comics. We'll see him wear his red one later this season. I think he'll wear the black one during season 2. There's a brief scene where we see him practicing with his weapon a little bit, like he's not ready to put the costume back on yet, but they're just teasing that. So I think it'll probably be episode 6 is my guess, or maybe like the very end of episode 5 where they tease him putting it on and we see him back in it in episode 6. Then they end the episode with Muse's latest victim inside his little lair there, his own little torture basement, just like Kingpin's, draining his blood, which he'll use to paint with. Like that's why he's draining the blood, because he uses it to make his art. Generally felt like the best episode of the series so far. Hopefully they can top this. I think they can. I think there's a pretty good chance that there's a couple good episodes left in the rest of the season. So everybody just post all your reactions in the comments below. And if there's any other Easter eggs or references that you spotted in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. We will say early guess is that Punisher will probably shave and put on a new Punisher suit as soon as Daredevil puts on one of those suits too. My episode 5 video will post next, and my full episode 5 video will post next week after they release it. So be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. Got a whole lot of Punisher coming real soon. Everybody click here for that episode 5 video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that. And click here to learn about the Defenders coming back and what's going on with season 2. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
I know your vision because we share it.
To being allies and friends.
Available now.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Daredevil Born Again episode 4. We built this breakdown on Easter eggs. Is that your best? From the return of the Punisher Fright Castle to Matt's colorful vigilante wardrobe to Skrulls, let's break down this episode scene by scene for all the details you missed. And we've been celebrating Daredevil Born Again with some exclusive merch designs at nerdriot.shop and stressing our way through these episodes with these custom pillows, also available on our merch store. Really the best way to support us here at New Rockstars. We open in the morgue on the belongings of Hector Ayala, found on the body at the time of his death. His wallet, smartphone, a knife, keys, watch, wedding ring, and his white tiger mask and tiger amulet. And you'll notice the beads of his necklace include a red, white, and blue pattern, which Hector must have customized as a reference to his Puerto Rican heritage. I know red, white, and blue are the colors on a lot of flags, but come on, the dude wasn't French. I also appreciate that we open this episode with the vigilante mask, just to close with Matt revealing he has 5 vigilante masks. Matt asks the medical examiner about the kill shot, but despite the bullet being potentially custom, no casing was found. Matt senses some footsteps.
How did you get in here?
I want to see my uncle, Hector Ayala.
So this is Hector's niece, whom we saw in the courtroom in episode 3, named Angela Del Toro. In the comics, Hector has 2 sisters, Ava Ayala and Awilda Ayala Del Toro, and Angela is Awilda's daughter. Angela was introduced in Brian Michael Bendis' Daredevil comics in 2003 as Hector's niece, an FBI agent who ends up taking on the power of the White Tiger from her uncle's amulets when he's falsely accused of murder. Angela is the 4th White Tiger in the comics before her aunt, Hector's sister, Ava, ends up taking on the mantle as the 5th White Tiger after Angela retires. Angela is played by actress Camila Rodriguez. Now, there was another Angela Del Toro mentioned in Jessica Jones, season 1, episode 6, some private investigator in New York City that we never see. Assuming Marvel plans to confirm all of these shows as MCU canon, this is just one of many logical overlaps, and I guess we could say that that PI was just some other Angela Del Toro. But the fact that Angela got into this morgue, and the mortician's like, hey, how'd you get in here? It tells us that this girl is already at least pretty skilled, or just ballsy, and we should know that with Yusuf Khan set to appear in a later episode, it's very possible that Kamala Khan might show up in this season as well. And since we know that Kamala is building a team of young Avengers or champions in New York City with Kate Bishop, Angela Del Toro is yet another hero as a future White Tiger who could be a kid hero in that lineup. As Matt gives Angela his arm, we focus on the White Tiger mask and amulet in the evidence bag as if these items are calling to her. This episode's director, Jeffrey Nachmanoff, told our colleague Brandon Davis that there was an alternate cut of this episode that would have shown the tiger amulet's eyes illuminating when Angela got too close to it. The way she sobs to Matt that she hates the city and the cops and that no one's gonna do anything, she's absolutely being set up to take on this mantle herself. The question now is, could Matt Murdock take on the role as a mentor daddy to these young vigilantes? He already defended the kid in the spider costume that the mayor singled out in his inaugural speech, though I don't know if Matt remembers that that kid was Peter Parker from Queens after Doctor Strange's spell. In our recent Spider-Man 4 video, I speculated that Sadie Sink was cast as Gwen Stacy, and with the possible shout out to Miles Morales in episode 3 with Officer Morales, Jefferson Davis changed his name to Morales in the comics, and it was Morales in Across the Spider-Verse. We could just be getting a lot of young heroes being set up in the orbit of Matt Murdock. We see graffiti of Wilson Fisk that we saw in past episodes, with the letters of Muse etched as a signature along the bottom. All the Muse mural artwork on the series was done by David Mack, who's one of the most talented artists who has worked on Daredevil comic titles. He also wrote for Echo and worked on Jessica Jones and Captain America Winter Soldier, and some fun details are in the design here. The left side and then the shirt on the right side and the crown all have an inlay of the backside art of an American $1 bill. The words King and Penn also have that inlay, and the I in King is formed by the Empire State Building. The dollar bill art depiction of the Masonic Pyramid is deconstructed in a particular way to match the New York City skyline, which also might be Muse's way of suggesting that he's kind of deconstructing the conspiratorial powers that secretly run the world. Overall, this mural shows the duality of Wilson Fisk, his white-clad, smiling public servant mask, which deceptively winks, and his true, scowling, black-clad, monstrous nature, which Muse has covered in flames, which also connects to the idea of Matt Murdock's world on fire, the way he perceives the violent world that he described to Claire Temple in season 1 of Daredevil. So this right side is the true Wilson Fisk that Matt Murdock sees, and this villainous, violent, cheap day Fisk is the one we end this episode with. We also see the Punisher Skull Triggered mural that Jessica broke down last week, also signed by Muse in the bottom right. The teeth of the skull are formed by the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, and the Chrysler Building. We have to assume that Bastion just walks these streets and observes everything that's going down, including the corrupt cops who reappropriate Frank Castle's sigil as their own symbol to try to justify their killing of vigilantes in cold blood. So Triggered, we should assume, is kind of Bastion Muse's way of mocking those cops for getting too trigger happy when vigilantes or lawyers or the media make them look bad. So Muse is showing an impressive amount of strength, lifts an incapacitated guy down the tracks while watching a passing subway. This is our first look at Bastion's form as Muse this season, and he looks very much like Ron Garney's design in Charles Soule's 2016 Daredevil run, with full body canvas bag covering pinned together, a knit beanie, suspenders, and some bloody eye holes forming tear streaks down the face. The difference here is we can see Bastion's eyes underneath. The Soule Garney run of the comics never reveals what Muse's name is. He's just always kind of a mystery Banksy figure. So for this series to start with Bastion as a stalker figure at Heather Glenn's book reading, and with Heather as a figure in both the orbits of Matt Murdock and of Wilson and Vanessa Fisk, it's just pretty troubling for Heather, right? Also, just imagine being one of those people on that subway car looking out at the passing darkness and then for a flash seeing this guy? Yikes! Between that and Officer Shanahan popping like a circus balloon filled with blood on another train car, I would just start taking taxis. This episode was written by David Feige and Jesse Wigato. David Feige is not related to Kevin Feige. He's a lawyer, a consultant, and a TV writer on a number of procedural shows who was clearly brought onto the staff to handle all the legalese, which would be why this episode episode focuses so much on the deterrence legal theory with Leroy stealing the fiddle battle. That said, several of the scenes in this episode, including everything with Frank Castle, any scenes with Wilson Fisk and Isla Zur, Vanessa Fisk, any scenes with Matt on his rooftop, any scenes with Kirsten McDuffie, and we're pretty sure Fisk's final scene with Adam were all written and all shot after the creative overhaul, and probably not part of the original version of this episode, which might be why episode 4 feels the most stitched together of the episodes we've seen so far. Daniel Blake parties Zemo style with BABYYY and her friend. They urge Daniel to keep partying with them, but Daniel says he has to be in early for Fisk's meeting with a tech company called Clean Green Haulers, which he says has a dope recycling idea to decrease garbage turnout. This, we will see later, is how BABYYY publishes the Mayor Garbage story. In episode 2, I wondered if the reason the Pim Van Dyne Foundation sponsored the New Year's Eve party was part of a bid to shrink the garbage of the city. Maybe this other tech company is another person who put in that bid. Outside, there's a mural dedicated to the White Tiger with vigilante justice written on there. This one is also signed Muse at the bottom. So Muse isn't just calling out the corrupt people. Muse feels bad for the masked vigilantes, and maybe that's how he justifies what he does. BB jokingly calls him Captain Planet, referring to the early 90s pro-environmental kids show that feels more like a reference written by one of these elder millennial writers on the show rather than a reference to actual 25-year-olds would make.
About that perch?
If you're under 25 and you're watching this video, do you know who Captain Planet was? Daniel heads home to the Staten Island ferry. Remember, if you get Staten, you don't need Manhattan, which means that when this kid was younger, his family's commute might have been disrupted by your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, who is involved in one of those ferries being split in half in Spider-Man Homecoming. So maybe he added the shout-out to the Spider-Man in Mayor Fisk's speech. We have a really fun transition that takes us across the street through a taxi where we see Leroy is being held for stealing the fiddle battle. Matt fiddles with his broken Daredevil mask horn on his rooftop, where this episode will end with him training with his batons as he prepares to take back up his Daredevil life. If this rooftop looks kind of like a soundstage to you, it's because it was part of the reshoots that were done later. They just wanted to set up this rooftop setting that Matt ends the episode on, which is why his phone call with McDuffie sending Matt to the Leroy Bradford case is just a little redundant. Kirsten says she's underwater on the Madison case, and it's not a nod to Madison with 2 Y's, but not where you think. Though I was wondering if the Madison case could be a David Feige lawyer nod to the Madison case in A Few Good Men, which was the landmark integration case that Kathy's dad tried that gave Tom Cruise Kathy such a chip on his shoulder to prove himself in that movie. I only just bring it up because I think anyone who writes legal dramas probably quotes Aaron Sorkin's script for A Few Good Men in their sleep. In couples therapy, Heather Glenn wants to talk to Fisk and Vanessa about this affair with Adam. Oh, poor Adam. Vanessa said that she was drawn to Adam's hands, the way he drew sketches. She said it was like finding a Klee at a garage sale, referring to the Swiss-born German artist Paul Klee in the early 20th century. Maybe it's just because I've been working on a Tenet analysis for the Deep Dive channel for the past 6 months, but I'm reminded of the affair Sater's wife, Kat, has with an artist named Arepo, whom she met during her art appraisal work, an artist whom Sater probably also physically tortured. Vanessa says Adam wasn't part of her husband's world.
What world is that? Politics?
Business.
The fact that they say it together shows that they both have a stake in this crime business, and in fact, Vanessa is really the one calling the shots. Vanessa keeps blaming Fisk for leaving her, as he recovered for a few months after Maya Lopez shot him, followed by his trip to Oklahoma, as a reason for her affair, and she connects it with some abandonment issues that she feels from her father going away on business, drinking, gambling, and her judging her mom for her weakness. Fisk says that he did confront Adam. We have seen his bloody knuckles in the past few episodes, but he just says that they had a dialogue. And just as he and Vanessa said business in sync, they answered this question together too.
Where's Adam now?
I don't know.
We get another BD report led with the production clapboard. As Jessica pointed out last week, the date in the lower right corner lists the year as 2024, so they clearly just used a clapboard that they had on set during the reshoot period. The S7 means that this would be season 7 of the BB report series, which is a pretty long run. Well done, BB. Now, the old man being interviewed here says he loves vigilantes. He's the same guy who said a few episodes back that if someone came up to him, he'd take out his piece and shoot them in the head. It kind of reminds me of Nick Fury's dad, you know, that he mentioned in Captain America the Winter Soldier, how he would carry a brown paper bag with him every day. It was just a nice old man, but he would show people what's inside, and there was a loaded gun in there. Matt meets Leroy Bradford, who lets out a few ableist remarks about Matt's blindness before we get this exchange that mentions Fiddle Faddle Camera Corn more times than we have to say a brand's name in a sponsor segment.
5 boxes of Fiddle Faddle caramel corn.
Caramel corn.
Caramel corn.
Caramel corn.
Caramel corn.
Leroy tries to say he paid for the food up front weeks earlier, and then he says this.
Could it have been a scroll?
Nope.
So just a reminder that this is all happening sometime after the events of Secret Invasion, when then President James Ritson declared war on all extraterrestrials on the planet, including the Skrull shapeshifters. And this is further proof that these scenes with Leroy, I think, were shot back in 2023, the previous version of the show, before Secret Invasion came out, and before Marvel Studios apparently decided to pretend Secret Invasion didn't happen, considering President Ritson didn't come up at all and any of the White House politics in Captain America Brave New World. But the current status of the Skrulls in the MCU was shown in the Marvel's film when the Kree leader Dar-Benn attacked the Skrull colony on Tarnax 4, which was led by Emperor Drogi. Carol, Kamala, and Monica saved some of the Skrulls, and Valkyrie took those survivors to some safe haven. If that haven was New Asgard on Earth, it would have been in open defiance of President Ritzen's order, and considering other New Asgard residents like Light Elves were causing legal issues in the She-Hulk series, it wouldn't surprise me if Matt came across the Skrulls in his work too. I just gotta hand it to Leroy for thinking a Skrull would pose as him, then grab 5 boxes of fiddle faddle where he was on camera, and then when he wasn't on camera, plant those boxes on him for the security guard and the cops to find. Matt meets the prosecutor, Sofia Ozola. Now, there was a woman named Sofia of Hell's Kitchen, a Serbian national with a violent militant background in the 2010 Black Panther, The Man Without Fear run. I don't know if this Latvian-American prosecutor is based on her. The two of them debate deterrence, which Matt calls a discredited penal philosophy. According to the National Institute of Justice, prison sentences are unlikely to prevent future crimes, and various studies have shown that minimum sentencing guidelines have led to excessive incarceration rates that are really just designed to fatten the bottom lines for these for-profit prisons across this country, and this policy doesn't really stop criminals from committing future crimes. Still, it's pretty wild for Matt to try to argue the whole basis of the American criminal justice system over one case of fiddle-faddle theft, especially a guy who mocked him repeatedly for being blind before Leroy had his sad monologue about being hungry. But I think that just shows how ardent of a litigator and how big-hearted of a spirit of the law fighter that Matt is. I bet his devil ears heard Leroy's tummy rumbling. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Relationships are complicated, all of them, even the good ones, especially the good ones. Navigating any relationship takes a lot of work and a lot of introspection. If you find yourself stuck in a pattern of pulling away when somebody starts to get close or feeling jealous of your partner's friends, that's going to get in the way of meaningful relationships that could otherwise be enriching your life. That's something therapy can help with, and our sponsor BetterHelp can help you get started. Instead of being stuck in an endless loop of questioning yourself, you can talk through relationship concerns with someone who's trained to help you find real answers. BetterHelp has made starting therapy as easy as taking a quiz. Just fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. If it's not the right fit, they carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Going to therapy is a sign of strength, not weakness. There are so many kinds of relationships that can be improved by therapy, not just romantic ones. Click the link in the description, scan the QR code, or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars and get 10% off your first month of therapy. Matt mentions it's Latvian Heritage Day to set up the event that Fisk goes to later. Now, Latvian Heritage Day isn't a known, recognized holiday in New York City of our world. There are other holidays that Latvian Americans celebrate. He says that he smelled the honey cake on her breath. He also charms Sophia by saying the term for the crime, petit larceny, comes from the French petit, meaning little. And, you know, you start talking French, you know what you're trying to get with that. And as Matt walks away, you can see Sophia's eyes lowering to check him out, like hating to see him leave, but loving to see him walk away. As Matt demonstrated when he sparred Jen Walters in Los Angeles, we are seeing kind of the 1-2 punch of Matt Murdock's legal expertise. Perry Mason by day, Cherry Baston by night. Matt passes Officer Powell, the cop who testified against Hector Ayala. Powell's face mostly healed since the last episode. Powell says everyone in his family wears a badge, and Matt hears Powell's heart beating true, as Powell says he had nothing to do with Ayala's death. Still a dirtbag, though. Fisk brings Daniel, Buck, and Sheila out to the port in the Red Hook area of Brooklyn, saying New York City has long neglected industrial development. He has a model showing a number of shipping cranes, and fun fact, shipping cranes like these in the Oakland port and San Francisco Bay Area are what inspired the artists on George Lucas's team for the Empire Strikes Back designs of the AT-ATs. Really, what Fisk seems to be trying to do by revitalizing the shipping center in Red Hook is to expand his own Fisk shipping interests to international and bi-coastal ports, especially after Maya Lopez bombed his Brooklyn train yard and shipping center in the Echo series. Sheila wants to slow play the project and go through all the proper channels and the red tape, while Daniel is ready to fast track it. Buck stays behind to update Fisk on the drama among the 5 families that we saw playing out in episode 3, saying that the problems in Red Hook will continue until the heads are sentenced or they die. And since those 5 families roll up to Vanessa, I assume this is going to lead to some further strains between Fisk and his wife. Leroy says that even a 10-day sentence is too much because the last time he did time, he missed his appointment for food stamps, and he had to resort to eating from dumpsters. And he brings up a really good point about the economic absurdity of defunding social welfare programs versus continuing public funding for prisons.
They're willing to spend 5 times more to lock me up than they're willing to spend to feed me.
So I know hearing so much about the fiddle faddle caramel corn sounded petty in this episode, but it has to be a seemingly petty larceny issue so that we can see why such a small thing would matter so much to someone. So here's where the episode takes a turn, and we cut abruptly to Mayor Fisk sitting in a classroom, George Bush reading My Pet Goat style, to these school kids singing Starship's 1985 We Built This City. What? So Starship is having a moment right now. They just used this same song in Paradise on Hulu, and their other big song, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, was just featured in the Super Bowl trailer for Thunderbolts, and both Hulu and Disney Plus are owned by Disney, so I'm sure it was just like a company-wide license buy. But at first I found it insane that an elementary school would have their kids singing a Starship song, followed by a Latvian group singing the same song in Latvian, until, you know, those of us that knew rock stars are kind of brainstorming that it might have been Mayor Fisk's campaign song, kind of like what YMCA was for Trump's 2024 campaign. I will say that Starship's song is one of the lesser mid-80s nostalgic rock ballads that were trying to pay respect to the roots of rock and its importance to all of American culture. Its music video is completely nonsensical and stupid. I think the track was used here to show how Fisk thinks he is building an elaborate city, but having no sense of what foundation that city was built on. Like he fashions himself a Fiorello LaGuardia.
It depends. I ain't never tried it, you know. I only tried it with Fish Street.
Daniel told her at the club the night before with the headline, Mayor Garbage, a Union Buster. So when you read this article, you see that BB's angle is that by cutting the red tape and working with big tech, Fisk is disrupting the sanitation unions. And you can't be anti-union. And I love this. The article says published at 5:47 a.m. And Daniel later says that he was out until 4:30 or 5. So that means BB must have literally rushed home, wrote up this article, probably half drunk, before she went to bed. Like if she wrote it and then sent it to publish, like scheduling the post, she would not have scheduled it for 5:47. She would have scheduled it for like 6 o'clock. I'm telling you, as someone who has run online digital publishing and content management systems. So it's amazing that BB got this up with 0 typos. Also, the thumbnail art for this article shows a bunch of rubble, and it looks like New York City's Flatiron Building, which was the building used for the Daily Bugle in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. The rubble is piled pretty high. It could be like a stock image from the Battle of New York. I also like that circle with Fisk using some New Rockstar's thumbnail design principles there. Also, I'm sorry to do this, but if this is Lincoln Middle School, why do some of these kids look 13 and other kids look like they're 7-year-olds who wandered in from the elementary school across the street? Now, if you are one of these child actors watching this video, it is not your fault. You sing like an angel. Well done. But the casting team of the show clearly didn't give this much thought. And of course, as with any group shot of children, inevitably, half of them are looking directly into the camera. Like, check this out. We got these 2 girls who are like, Dada, look, I tied my own shoes. And then you got this kid who's like, I'm in driver's ed. Look, I get it. In school choirs, you do mixed grades sometimes, but you know, just some of these kids are way too young for middle school. Also, they place Mayor Fisk in the tiniest chair, which I know sometimes you do for the photo op. Clearly, this chair is smaller than all the other chairs in this room that the adults are sitting in, and smaller than any chair any average middle schooler would sit in. This is clearly a kindergartner's chair, so it's kind of like the middle school was like, quick, get the smallest chair you can find so our mayor feels like a giant sitting in it. Elementary school across the street, bring one of your tiny chairs for Mayor Fatass. When Mayor Fisk stands to clap, they keep the camera at a low angle, making him look towering.
Now for our next one.
Oh, no. That's fine.
And now I'm dying to know what the next song was gonna be. Kind of like, and now, Mr. Mayor, this random group of 6-year-olds and 13-year-olds will sing Foreigners, I Want to Know What Love Is. I've gotta take a little time. Fisk gets the hell away from this school, going to the Latvian Cultural Center because Sheila says Latvian Americans are an important voting bloc in New York City. For reference, there are only about 8,000 Latvians living in New York City, a city with a population of over 8 million people, making that a 1/10 of 1%. By comparison, there are nearly 600,000 Puerto Ricans living in New York City, comprising about 6.7% of the population. But that didn't stop Mayor Fisk from encouraging people to gun down Hector Ayala from the Heights. So, you know, priorities. Sheila, get it together. But this Latvian cultural group sings We Built This City in Latvian. Fisk cannot escape what is widely considered one of the worst rock songs. I'm not afraid to say it. It's catchy, but it makes no sense. I don't know why the Latvians are so important in this episode. My thinking is that maybe the Latvians are one of the 5 families, and that this could all be setting up a gang conflict later. I hope that's the case. We should also note that some scenes in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier were set in Latvia. To be clear, this is not a Latveria thing, Latveria is a fictional country that's actually implied to be in a different part of Europe than the Baltic states. I also know that actor Mark Geller was credited in this episode as Carlos Urbe, who was the first bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Latvia in the 1920s. His name caught my eye because Mark Geller is also the actor who plays the mysterious Lumen Company founder Keir Egan on Severance. So I'm just wondering if there was more to this Latvian Heritage Day subplot that was removed from the episode during reshoots, but that they still had to credit Geller. Something weird was going on here, folks. But the screaming that Mayor Fisk wishes he could have unleashed on the kids or at the Latvian Cultural Center, he now just blasts at his staff.
Mayor garbage! Is that it? Is that your best?
Actually, if you take Fisk's grammar literally there, he's almost screaming at himself. But Daniel owns up to being the source of the leak, saying that he was out till around 5 with BB taking tequila and ketamine. And maybe it's just Daniel admitting that he doesn't deserve this job, and Fisk feeling that he's getting his fill of boy slapping with Adam, that he suddenly shifts to compartmentalizing his anger and forgiving Daniel. As we'll see at the end of this episode, he admits that forgiveness is a form of love in his deluded worldview, but he does place his hand on the shoulder in the same kind of threatening gesture that Bane does to Ben Mendelsohn in The Dark Knight Rises. Fisk says,
"In the fullness of time, you'll make a
You ready yet?
The fullness of time actually comes from Galatians. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. Some believe that Daniel Blake could be being set up on the show as a figure similar to Richard Fisk, the Rose, Wilson and Vanessa's son in the comics. Now, throughout this episode, we have been seeing garbage bags piling up on the sidewalk of New York, which isn't entirely uncommon in New York City, but now this BD report interstitial confirms it is a result of Mayor Fisk's conflict with the sanitation workers union. Matt returns to the place Hector was gunned down and uses his hearing to track an empty bottle of scotch rolling down the hill to the sewer gutter where anything on this path would have rolled, and so that's where he finds the custom bullet casing of the bullet that killed Hector. Then we get some generic established shots of New York, which seem to be being used in the editing here as visual buffers to transition us into this new sequence that seems to be inserted into the episode after the reshoots. I only mention it because the bullet casing in the earlier shot does not seem to have the Punisher skull logo on it when Matt finds it in the sewer, but it does very clearly when he shows it to Frank. But we see Matt passing an outdoor security camera and then takes his elevator where he's being reflected in a mirror that probably also has a security camera behind it. Matt follows some utility tunnels, passing this sign for telephone company personnel from Knickerbocker Village Management. So this tells us that Frank Castle lives in the basement beneath Knickerbocker Village, which is a housing development in New York's Two Bridges area on the Lower East Side. The notes of John Paisano's theme from the Netflix era return as Matt approaches this room. Just hearing that music has been a table setting to gear us up for the return of Frank Castle, the Punisher, John Bernthal, who, we should note, first joined Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock on screen on March 18th, 2016, when the 13 episodes of Daredevil Season 2 hit Netflix. So with this episode of Daredevil Born Again coming out on March 18th, 2025, it makes it 9 years to the day since that moment. I broke down Frank Castle's journey in our preseason recap video, but basically, since offing his enemies from his Black Ops team, Cerberus, including William Rollins, Ray Schoonover, and Billy Russo, Frank Castle has been embracing his moniker as the Punisher, never fully having gotten over the murders of his family, and allowing himself to cross that moral line that Matt Murdock refuses to cross, to kill violent murderers, to send a message to anyone else who might try to do that. Matt, as an attorney, defended Frank Castle in Frank's murder trial in Daredevil Season 2, but Frank owned up to doing what he did, and he ended up getting sentenced and sent to prison, and then fought Wilson Fisk in prison, which then led to a prison riot where Frank was able to escape, and Frank, having deduced that Matt was the Red that he had been fighting on the roofs of Hell's Kitchen, returned the favor to Red by sniping some warriors of the hand at the end of Season 2. The new
2 years ago, a record number of Wisconsinites cast their ballots, changing the balance of the state Supreme Court for the first time in 15 years. Since then, the court has made decisions on important issues, like voting rights and redistricting. Now the balance of the court is once again in your hands. Your vote will help determine who makes decisions on issues like the legal status of abortion, equal rights, and public safety. Make your voice heard by voting on April 1st.
I don't think I should be in swim shorts for this.
Welcome back to Papa John's. For a very limited time, we've got free pizza. Yo, tell them what it is.
Buy any large pizza at regular menu price, get one large one-topping pizza for free.
No, like, free. Yeah, we did do that.
Better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's.
As an Old Spice hair rescue worker, we're not just rescuing hair health and hairstyle. We're rescuing the man beneath the hair. It's a real rush.
Old Spice styling products promote healthier, fuller, and more moisturized-looking hair, all while helping you consistently achieve the perfect look. That's because they're blended with the perfect mix of ingredients for men's hair, and they're available in low, medium, and high holds with matte and low shine finishes. Old Spice styling products leave no residue and wash off your hands easily.
Every day is different, but luckily, we've got the best tools out there.
Hey, my eyes are down here. Men have hair too. Rescue it with Old Spice styling products.
New head writer that Marvel Studios brought in to creatively overhaul this series was Dario Scardapane, who wrote on the Punisher series on Netflix, so this scene was really where he was able to shine. We see Frank taking some meds, suggesting he's doing a better job trying to control his anger. As he takes these pills, we see he has this patch on his arm. This is a Marine Raider Battalion patch. The Marine Raiders originally fought in the Pacific in World War II before they were decommissioned in 1943, but they were actually recommissioned as the Marine Corps Special Operations Regiment in 2006. Originally 86 Marines handpicked from the elite Marine Force Recon, which was actually the group Frank Castle was reported to have served with in the backstory of the Netflix era shows. In 2014, this regiment was renamed the Marine Raiders in honor of the World War II Marines. This patch is depicted with a skull on a diamond surrounded by 5 stars. Matt shows Frank that the bullet casing has the skull logo. Now, for a bullet casing to have anything like this on it, and for Matt to be able to feel its texture, it would have had to have been either etched or just like burned through a brand perhaps onto the casing, and it would be very risky to tamper with a live round like that. So presumably this was done with an empty casing before that empty casing was refilled with the gunpowder and the bullet projectile. I'm just saying that it's a lot of trouble to go through this, and that the cops who use bullets like this really wanted to send a message, especially if this casing rolled down a hill into a gutter. They wanted even Pennywise down there to know who did this. Frank says that the bullet must have belonged to some bullshit fanboy, and Matt says that, you know, you could use your guns and your hardware to be of service, and using the word service really triggers Frank here.
Were you of service, Red? Did you serve? You pranced around the city in a Halloween costume, beating the snot out of bad guys? Hey, thank you for your service.
He calls him Red again. This kind of hostility recalls their arguing on the roof in Daredevil Season 2, where Frank sees himself as a soldier currently in wartime and thus justified in his killing. In the back of this room is a wall of targets with several of them X'd out, showing that Frank is still on that warpath of killing murderers that he finds. I want to say the one closest to him in this shot might have been Billy Russo, but Billy Russo also just kind of has a generic look that a lot of Frank's probable targets have, and the image directly above that guy's face shows a dead body in a bathtub, like Joe Russo's character in Civil War, and being in a bathtub is not how Billy Russo was left in Punisher Season 2. Frank taunts that he thinks Matt didn't come here for Frank's help, but rather for his permission to lay his hands on someone.
You're guilty. Excuse me? I guilt that shame. That's my own, Red.
I think we could look at this great scene as Matt finally going to a kind of Catholic confession, because since Father Lantom died in Daredevil Season 3, and now after Foggy has died, Matt has had no spiritual confidant to confess his sins to, and because he can't go to confession, he can't go to communion as a devout Catholic. Frank accuses Matt of overtrusting the system. This episode is titled Sic Semper Systema, which is a play on the Marine phrase of Sic Semper Fidelis, or often shortened as Semper Fi, meaning always faithful. Sic Semper Systema would mean thus always to the system, as in you're always relying on the man-made systems to take care of you, even when those systems are so prone to failure. We're also reminded of the phrase Sic Semper Tyrannus, thus always to tyrants, the phrase attributed to Brutus in the assassination of Julius Caesar, and the Virginia State motto shouted by John Wilkes Booth upon shooting President Lincoln at Ford's Theater in 1865. Also interesting that it was at Lincoln Middle School where Fisk had to endure his hatred of systems in this episode. Sic Semper Tyrannus is a rallying cry against the abuse of power and a promise that tyrants will always get their comeuppance. So, thus always to systems could be a phrase that applies to what Matt Murdock and what Wilson Fisk realized this episode, that trying to walk the noble path and trusting the system will always disappoint you, and to really get things done, you have to bypass and break down that system. However, our favorite Latin expert on Twitter, who helped us out so much during Agatha, pointed out that a technically accurate Latin version of thus always to systems would actually be Sic Semper Systemati. Sic Semper Systema is really closer to the system is always like this, which I think is just another way of looking at how the systems of New York are always broken and unchangeable. So why even bother playing by those rules? Frank says this is really all about Foggy, and he urges Matt to say his name, coward, and then he finally gets Matt to break down.
Pretzel on the way. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you a picture of the pretzel, Jeff. It's a one-time
confirmed that Eldon Henson will return for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, and I think this, plus flashbacks, might be how, as a ghostly presence occupying Matt's mind, the voice of his conscience. Now, I know there was a numerical Easter egg in Episode 1 hinting at the theory that Foggy Nelson might have faked his death. I just think Foggy would be a more powerful presence, as just this voice and vision that Frank in this scene is describing. Frank says that Bullseye gets to line up at the chow line in prison and breathe the same air that Matt does, and Matt rages, "He got life!"
How about old Foggy? He got life.
Frank twists the word life from being a sentence to just being a blessing, an opportunity. After Matt leaves, Frank looks off to the side, suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. I love this little nonverbal choice by John Bernthal because it's like he's seeing and hearing his son Frank Jr. in this room, meaning that Matt's final words about Foggy being more decent than they could ever be is what stopped Frank in his tracks, stopped him moving long enough to hear his ghost son's voice. And what did that ghost son say? "We built this city." I'm just kidding. He's like, "Go get him, Dad," as in, "Go after and help this guy, Dad." And we will know Frank will return in a future episode based off of some set photos. So we're going to be getting some more punishment this season. We catch up with Fisk and Vanessa. Now, last episode, they sat at opposite ends of the dinner table, kind of like the sequence in Citizen Kane that showed the disillusion of Charles Foster Kane's marriage. Now they're sitting close together, and Fisk says,
what's the name?
I learned by watching my father.
He said the thing! Now I was hoping he would say exactly what he told Tex in Daredevil Season 3.
When I was a boy, I beat my father's skull in with a hammer.
Fisk said that he learned from his father how to move men's minds and break their bodies, but he did not learn forgiveness. That's something he learned from Vanessa. Matt catches up with Heather.
I need somebody to help me with the healers.
He's referring to the Greek mythological Sisyphus, and also perhaps the hill, the bottle, and the bullet casing rolled down. How the forces of gravity in the city are even working against him. If only the city wasn't built on rock and roll. After a trip to Pound Town with Heather, Matt ascends to the roof while Fisk descends to his lair. As we hear a church organ arrangement of John Cassano's theme via the Newton Brothers, Fisk passes the rabbit in the snowstorm painting. That's the painting that symbolized the crumbling wall of his childhood home that young Wilson would have to stand and stare at while his father abused his mother. The painting that made adult Fisk feel so alone, and the first thing he bonded with Vanessa over. This painting still has the spatter of blood that stained it in the final episode of Season 3 when it hung in the presidential hotel.
That shit.
And Fisk all got in that bloody brawl. Meanwhile, Matt's prized exhibit is a collection of 5 masks. We saw a straight-on shot of these in the January trailer. Let's break down what these are. The first on the far right seems to be his textured red mask that he was wearing in episode 1 of the season, but this has the broken horn repaired. Maybe this is a backup mask. He did have the broken horn in an earlier scene on the rooftop, so I don't think he would have had time to repair it. Next, this black or very dark maroon one to the left of it. It's my favorite. It reminds me of his black suit that we saw Matt wearing in the animated Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man when he was also voiced by Charlie Cox, though that was in a different universe. This black mask could be inspired by the black armor in Daredevil 321 or the black suit from the Shadowland storyline. Now, the gold one in the middle is the throwback yellow and red design that he was wearing in Los Angeles and She-Hulk. Then a smoother red mask that I assume is the one he was wearing at the end of Daredevil Season 1 and throughout Daredevil Season 2. And then closest to us on the far left is a gray or bluish mask that I had some trouble identifying. As Matt uncovers his batons, we match cut to Wilson's carb-heavy dinner uncovered, ziti and sausage with peppers, a far cry from the one asparagus and egg white omelet that he ate in episode 1. And we see the recipient of Fisk's bloody knuckles, poor Adam, imprisoned behind bars in this lair, just watching as Fisk dines. Adam is played by actor Lou Taylor Pucci, who actually co-starred with Vincent D'Onofrio in the 2005 film Thumbsucker when they were father and son, and it's just kind of weird that now they're fighting over the same woman. The sounds of Fisk's fork and Adam rattling the bars and Matt's chain on the rooftop all mixed together, and we cut to black on Matt flinging that weapon directly at us, reminding us of his fight with Nobu at the end of Season 1, and then after a few seconds of black, we cut to the rattling of the passing subway cars. Muse carries his victim to his own lair that's filled with bloody artwork. We see one figure screaming with a crown over his head, like the crown that covered Wilson's head. Maybe this crown is how he identifies his future victims. And we see the letters M, U, and S, and E in print above, and then scratched by hand below. This figure's eyes seem to be gouged out, which reminds me of what Muse does to Blind Spot in the comics. The second painting we see is a similar figure, but we see the words, the true, is it voice or victim? It just reminds me of how Matt and Frank were arguing over who the real victim is, right? And how Frank was so offended that Matt put the word victim in his mouth. But this victim sees a few corpses hanging from hooks, a woman wearing heels, another corpse to her right, and I think that's a third victim on the far right of frame. And then Muse jams a plug and a hose into this guy's body, draining him of his blood, and this will be the paint that Muse has been using for all of his artwork. Which makes me wonder, did Muse use blood in some part in the White Tigers tribute mural, or does he only use blood for other types of artwork? And the specific brighter red shading of the blood here just reminds me of the bloody ooze that covered all the surfaces in New York City in the original Netflix era run of the show. Comment down below with your thoughts on this episode. Follow me at EAVOS and subscribe to all the channels in the New Rockstars Network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
As director of an alternative school, Brittany Kinzer cut corners by using unlicensed teachers. The school where Kinzer was director even employed an unlicensed teacher with a gun conviction. The school was forced to admit their mistake after the teacher was charged with molesting a 5-year-old child. Brittany Kinzer's reckless policies put students in danger. Jill Underley puts our children first. As a teacher, principal, and superintendent, Jill Underley for State School Superintendent.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss.
And I'm Jessica Clement.
And this is a breakdown of all the details and Easter eggs that you missed in Daredevil Born Again Episode 1 and Episode 2.
These first two episodes have finally brought Charlie Cox's Daredevil home in an undoubtedly shared universe of the MCU, with heartbreak and bone crunch. And after reacting to the episodes from the Shout Couch, it's over here, that's what I'm pointing at, we are now here to analyze these episodes scene by scene for the details you might have missed.
And shirts like this, Justice and Punishment Design and Jessica's Silver Surfer Design, are both available for purchase exclusively on our merch store, nerdriot.shop, which is the best way to support us here at New Rockstars. And we're so glad to be breaking down these first two episodes together, since this Jerica journey began on the road to Born Again 2 years ago. And we broke down the first 3 seasons of Daredevil from the Netflix era, plus Defenders, in separate videos if you want to catch up. And for a more condensed recap, check out this video. Okay, so we open once again with the Marvel television title card, the second time we're seeing this bumper after Agatha All Along, now that Marvel Studios wants their streaming series to feel less like 6-chapter movies and more like true episodic television. Among the flashing comic book imagery is the fist of the Iron Man armor model 22, aka the Thor Buster armor from 2003's Invincible Iron Man number 64.
We open on a shot of the Lexington Hotel in New York City, seen from the same rooftop where Wilson Fisk will meet Vanessa as he steps out from his victory party. We open on it with a kind of Shudder transition, which we'll see again reversed in a few minutes when Matt listens in on Foggy's phone call. And I think we can see all of these opening images as Matt opens his senses to the sounds of rhythms of the city, a sense of paranoia that something is, just off tonight.
And then from this, we cross dissolve and pull back on the red and blue and green lights of traffic that also match the tacky out-of-season lights that adorably adorn Josie's Bar on the corner of 10th Avenue and West 51st Street. Those cross streets place us firmly in the heart of Hell's Kitchen.
We see shots of Washington Square and then a red-tinted street that houses the law offices of Nelson, Murdoch, and Page, the new name of the law firm that Matt, Foggy, and Karen wrote on a napkin at the final episode of Season 3 in 2018. Now their firm is firmly established with an actual sign. In his appearance as She-Hulk, Matt indicated that his firm was running.
I run my practice in Hell's Kitchen. And we mostly do pro bono work.
So regarding the timeline, the Netflix Marvel seasons all took place roughly around the time they came out. So Daredevil Season 3 would be after the events of Iron Fist in Season 2. So really sometime late 2017 or early 2018, but presumably must have taken place before the snap of Infinity War. Because, no one was running around in Season 3 being like, people are dust now. But we do know that Matt Murdock must have survived Thanos' snap because he appeared in a flashback in the Echo series fighting Maya Lopez, which must have taken place during the blip period. Matt showed up in Spider-Man No Way Home. His scene was set in fall 2024, and then in Christmas of 2024, Wilson Fisk resurfaced in the Hawkeye series. Matt's appearance in She-Hulk was set in the springtime of 2025, so I think this prologue sequence is set sometime late 2025 or early 2026.
Matt Murdock Rock, Charlie Cox, Karen Page, Deborah Ann Wool, and Foggy Nelson, Eldon Henson return from the Netflix seasons, talking about a late-night diner to hit up, referring to a diner called Becky's on 8th Avenue that has been closed, which sets up Matt and Fist needing to meet in a different diner at the end of this episode. Foggy then says,
Dark times indeed.
Oh, Foggy, you don't know how dark things are about to get, baby. I'm sorry.
Karen jokes that the Hell's Kitchen nostalgia is running thin, and Foggy says,
Not nostalgia, reverence for the past, yet hope for the future.
Another meta line there. Even Wool and Henson being in this opening scene is a blessing born out of reverence for the past era of the series. Daredevil Born Again, when it was first announced, was a harder reboot that recast some characters and really had no plans to include Foggy or Karen, but the series was creatively overhauled to be more of a true 4th season of the show that fans remembered, and that included bringing back these characters. 3 of the 9 episodes this season were completely rewritten from Dario Scardapane, who had worked on the Punisher series, and it was reshot by the new incoming directors Justin Benson, Mayer, and Moorhead, who had worked on Moon Knight and Loki, including this pilot episode. But you'll note that episode 2 was credited to Matt Corman and Chris Ord, so that was more representative of the previous version of this series.
They go to Josie's bar for the retirement of Detective Cherry. Josie the bartender is played by Susan Farron, and she returns for a cameo after being a regular in the first season in 2015 and appearing for 1 episode of The Defenders.
Karen and Matt established that they're under a friends code at the moment, which could suggest why Matt was so okay hooking up with She-Hulk during those times. And they say,
No one's above the law.
Nope. Certainly not you, Miss Page.
Just a little reminder that Karen did totally shoot and kill Kingpin's assistant Wesley in season 1, and Matt finally learned about that in season 3. Detective Cherry tells Detective Kim that he was thinking about restoring a farmhouse upstate. Just a reminder that we know of at least one farmhouse in upstate New York that used to belong to the Stark family.
Nikki M. James plays Kristen McDuffie, an attorney chatting with Foggy. In Mark Waid's Daredevil run in 2011, Kristen McDuffie was an assistant district attorney who ends up setting up a law firm with Matt in San Francisco. Their relationship ends up turning into something romantic, and at the end of season 3, Foggy was engaged to his girlfriend Marcy Stahl, another lawyer, but things seem to have stalled with Stahl.
Foggy reminds us that he once worked for Hogarth, Chow, and Benowitz. That was the firm of Jerry Hogarth, originally introduced in Jessica Jones, but later came back in many of the Netflix Marvel shows. Jerry complains about vigilantes like Daredevil and White Tiger, who appears on the TV news beating up bodega robbers. We get to know Hector a bit better in episode 2, and Jerry and Kim bemoan,
We get sued and they get cheered.
This echoes what Dex and Bullseye had said about vigilantes in season 3. Fisk used that sentiment to manipulate Dex into putting on the Daredevil suits.
Josie toasts Cherry.
May you be in heaven a full half hour before the devil knows you're dead.
Before the devil knows you're dead is a common saying, but it also applies to Matt as Daredevil, who will soon find himself on a ticking clock before this devil knows Foggy is dead.
Oh, Foggy says that there's a 20-year-old bottle of O'Melveny's behind the bar. O'Melveny and Myers is the name of an actual law firm that has represented Marvel Studios on a number of patent lawsuits.
What?
I just brought it up because it's not the name of any spirit that I'm aware of or a Marvel character that we know of. I just thought it was an interesting name.
Oh my god.
Anyway, it's kind of like them saying, like, we got lawyers here too in Marvel Studios.
Think about it.
And they'll beat you up at night, you know, because our lawyers are vigilantes.
I get it.
I get it. Don't go after them. Anyway, so Matt's sense is heightened, and there's this interesting lens flare around his ear and a dolly zoom on Matt, and the aspect ratio shifts to focus tight on Foggy outside, like through the narrowed eyes. Matt hears someone gulping a beer, the crack of a billiards table, and the squeaking mouse. Might want to get that checked, Josie. And then to Foggy's phone call with his client, Benny, frantic that there are men at his safe house.
In the Netflix era, Matt's heightened senses and hearing was often shown in different ways and described as him perceiving a painting he called A World on Fire.
But this depiction here recalls Peter Parker's Spidey sense, I would say, especially in Spider-Man No Way Home. Remember there was a dolly zoom and a dubbing of ambient sound, like Peter's dread moment in No Way Home. Matt is feeling his own kind of devil sense that something really, really terrible is about to happen to his best friend. Now, obviously, Matt doesn't have any kind of cosmic arachno frequency or predicted power, but he is a good enough listener to the world that I think he can scan the vibe of Hell's Kitchen on any given night, feel the rhythm of various movements around the city that we open this episode with, that he can just feel it and worry that this phone call is Foggy being lured into a trap.
We then see a paperclip unfold.
Tell them niggas ass, Jay.
Paperclip used to kill a fly with expert precision. Obviously, this is Dex back on the loose. Someone, please, put him back in prison. Something horrible. Using a paperclip this way is a nod to the introductory scene of Colin Farrell's Bullseye in the 2003 Daredevil film, where he used a straightened paperclip to kill a guy in a pub. And that movie's ending scene, which showed an injured Bullseye killing a fly with a syringe. Ooh. Gloved hands reach up to screw the light bulb, revealing the concentric circles of a Bullseye target on the back of them.
Now, we last saw Bullseye, aka Dex, bench Benjamin Poindexter in Daredevil Season 3. He's played by Wilson Bethel. He was a mentally unhinged FBI agent turned serial killer with perfect aim and the ability to turn any object into a deadly weapon. For a time, Wilson Fisk exploited Dex as a fake Daredevil to try to ruin Matt's reputation. But Matt, Foggy, and Karen worked tirelessly to expose this fake Daredevil. After Dex crashes Fisk and Vanessa's wedding, Fisk broke his back, but in the ending scene of the season, we saw that Dex was getting a new spine made out of a metal called cognium by a surgeon named Kenji Oyama, aka Lord Darkwind, father to Yuriko Oyama, aka the mutant Lady Deathstrike. Now, in the comics, Bullseye's metallic backbone is adamantium, and now that adamantium was introduced in Captain America Brave New World with potential medical uses, we were wondering if maybe that metal could get retconned as the backbone of this series. Other than Dex being a homicidal maniac who murders a ton of people, it's not clear what he's been up to all these years since, or why only now he targets Foggy Nelson, and who might actually have sent Dex and why.
Foggy tells Matt that he stashed his client Benny after something that went down in Red Hook. Red Hook is a small town in New York, and in X-Men Dark Phoenix, Jean Grey's hometown was Red Hook. And it also came up in the pilot of Legion as a past place where David Haller's mutant powers had a traumatic episode. Red Hook comes up later in this episode as well.
Matt suits up and uses his Billy Club's cables to scale up a building, and once again we hear the 2015 Netflix-era theme music by John Pisano, arranged for this series by the Newton brothers. The suit he wears in the series is a further redesign from the West Coast yellow and red suit that he wore in She-Hulk. This one is all red, and not afraid of the ruby red era that we saw in the Ben Affleck Daredevil, and I like it. We get a great hero shot when he lands on the fire escape in front of the church, and we see a stained glass window depicting a dove, a symbol of peace, the opposite of what this Matt's about to get into.
Oh no. Matt's clubs got the cable upgrade in Daredevil Season 2, but the Netflix era was pretty limited with the wire work. In this flashy reshot pilot, Matt goes full Spider-Man, which includes it being a little unclear what above the frame his cables are actually attaching to when he swings. That also consists with some would-be sound effects mixed into the cable burst.
But Matt's senses go off again when he super hears Foggy's next call with Benny, who said the gunman just wanted to know where Foggy was, and Matt dives off the roof, but before we know it,
he said someone's supposed to
that blood squib went right off in Karen's face. This poor girl's always getting covered in blood.
Two cops rush out and are immediately taken out with headshots. Dex steps up to Josie's and tosses a smoke grenade inside. Karen whips out a gun. After what she did to Wesley, it's clearly obvious she knows what to do with a firearm. Dex points his gun at Karen, but Matt swings in and tackles Dex through the window. Dex says, "Hello, Karen," in the exact same tone as he did in Season 3 when he was dressed as Daredevil for the first time and killed a bunch of reporters at the Bulletin.
Where's she at?
Oh, Karen.
That time he said, "Hello, Karen, it's nice to see you again." And again, he just killed a dude right behind her, and she pulled a gun on him that time too.
Yeah, it's like she can never escape this cycle of violence.
And it's the same gun somehow.
Yeah. Now, what follows is an incredible Warner fight sequence that lasts over 3 minutes without any obvious cuts, though we assume that there must have been at least a few hidden in the smoke and the camera movements and the action. But the camera we see dollying forward and backward through like 6 to 7 different setups, and it's super impressive, even if they clearly shot this on a soundstage. Daredevil Season 2 tried to one-up the iconic hallway long take of the first season with like a stairwell long take, but in that one, it went downward. This one goes up, which is a lot harder for a camera crew to do, all the way up to the roof. So I think we should break this down beat by beat. So Matt and Dex crash through the window. We're in the same shot here, right? So Dex throws another smoke grenade to make this all extra smoky, obviously just to make it easier for the stuntmen to blend in. Matt disarms Dex. They go at it for a bit. Matt takes a blade to the shoulder and then does a combination of a kick plus a spin kick. He loves the spin kicks. Sparks shower down on them both. Matt flings his club and catches it perfectly on the rebound, and then he angrily grunts while using the club to knock out one of the daggers in his arm. At some point in the madness here, his horn gets knocked out. I couldn't figure out where exactly it was.
Next setup, we hear Karen with Foggy outside, and that causes Matt to hesitate as Dex throws another dagger at his head. We push past him, following Cherry outside, where we see Karen applying pressure to Foggy's wound, and his breathing is getting strained.
But then we dolly back into the smoky bar. Still have not obviously cut here, though there probably were some concealed cuts, as Matt and Dex continue fighting another.
To be a pet parent is to be human. Sometimes we feel guilty, even when it's for their own good. It's not always a walk in the park. That's why more and more pet people rely on Hills, with scientifically proven formulas to give more love than humanly possible. Because you're only human, there's Hills. Science does more.
Why is Elon Musk pouring millions of dollars into Wisconsin? Because he's trying to buy our Supreme Court seat for this guy, Brad Schimmel. Could Brad Schimmel be his little bitch? What do you think? Don't let Musk turn Wisconsin into a total Schimmel show.
Unwrap some joy with Cadbury.
So it's resorts.
Sweet vacation home for your next great stay.
Another spin kick, but the impact of Dex hitting the bar causes the dagger to unluckily fling back into Matt's back. He uses the club to take out the lights of the club, perhaps trying to level the playing field against an opponent who can see.
Patrons slide doors closed to the billiard hall, which really just seems to set up Dex crashing down these doors a moment later. Matt Cable lassos a brave detective out of the way, but in doing so, takes another dagger to the chest. The female detective on the right hits Dex with a pool stick, but he knocks her out with a cue ball. Jesus Christ, someone stop this man! Dex then throws two balls at once, one toward Matt and one ricocheting off the walls to knock out the final woman on the right. And I assume the cue balls and daggers were CG, but they had to choreograph the blocking of the camera timing perfectly, knowing where these projectiles would go, which is really impressive.
Matt attends to this poor convulsing woman, and then the camera moves back up the back stairs as Dex, who's now winded, trudges up the stairs. He immediately kills the guy who's just asking what's going on, and then his partner begins screaming, and then Dex hits her too. Presumably one of these people were holding a can of something, because Dex picks up this can on the next level, and then after Matt bounces his club off the wall and ceiling to take out the light, the camera whip pans back to Matt as Dex chucks that can at his chest. Matt bonks him in the head with the club and tries blocking more daggers, but he misses several of them, which lodge into his shoulders. Both men at this point are just super spent. Matt gets distracted again by Karen's panicked pleading outside and Foggy's slowing heartbeat. So now we just follow Dex up the stairs and we get a close-up of his eyes looking completely insane under the mask.
Now we follow Dex out onto the roof where he thinks he's in the clear, but Matt zips up and lands in a Spider-Man pose. He leaps down and punches Dex, and the two both stick each other with daggers.
And the camera tilts downward to the street below where Foggy bleeds out, and paramedics have only now arrived on the scene. We tilt back up, and by now Matt is given the business to an unmasked Dex, and we see now very clearly that one of the horns on Matt's mask has been broken off.
Wow. And only now do we finally have a clear cut to Karen's bloody hands on Foggy's chest as he dies. Karen's hands jolt off his chest, and we cut back to Matt on the roof, who screams at Dex, "Why? Why?" And Dex only laughs. He just laughs, and Matt tosses him off the roof.
Matt removes his mask, revealing his identity to Cherry. Now, while Matt should have heard Cherry approaching, he is so emotionally distraught, and his senses were so dialed in on Foggy, listening for breaths and heartbeats that he knows will never come, that nothing else matters in this moment.
Dex, like Michael Myers, twitches back to life. The way his eye opens reminds us of his eye opening during his spinal surgery in the season 3 finale scene, illuminated by the cognium. Having